Chapter 297. The more she thought about it, the more guilty she felt. That night, she had assumed that the man was Li Siqing. But in fact, she did not even see his face clearly before she was pushed onto the bed. Was it really not Li Siqing? He said that he had deleted the video, which proved that he had seen it. So what was the truth? Tang Minjing was a bit uncertain. Looking at Qin Shuhua, she gritted her teeth and said, "If you really doubt it, then let's do the test." "Sure, I will ask Siqing to—" "No, don't let Brother Siqing know." Li Siqing was so smart that he would definitely ruin her plan. "We will do the test ourselves." The fetus was only 11 weeks old, and the doctor did not recommend amniocentesis. After warning Tang Minjing about the danger, she still insisted. She could not wait. If it was, she would be more careful in the future. But if it was not, Tang Minjing did not dare to think about it and insisted on lying on the bed. When the needle pierced her belly, the only thought in her mind was, "Baby, you must do well." Qin Shuhua rushed the test result, and after she left, Tang Minjing came back again and rushed it to 6 hours. 6 hours later, Tang Minjing came as scheduled, and Mrs. Tang came at the same time. Holding Mrs. Tang's hand, Tang Minjing's stomach was a bit uncomfortable. She was nervous and looking forward to the result. However, when Mrs. Tang got the result, she was completely stunned. Seeing her reaction, Tang Minjing's heart was pounding and she was very nervous. Taking the result with trembling hands, she was dumbfounded by the series of zeros on it. The expression on Mrs. Tang's face changed from the original expectation to painful disappointment. She turned around and slapped Tang Minjing hard. "Didn't you say the baby was Li Siqing's? How could this happen?" Tang Minjing's face was soon swollen. She stared at the result in her hand and murmured, "How is it possible? How is it possible? If it was not Li Siqing that night, then who could it be? Who could it be?" Recently, Li Siqing often worked overtime in the company, so Chungyu's work was much easier. In the 3 years that she had worked for Li Siqing, she had only left the morning shift a few times. Just when he thought he could relax a little more today, he received a call from the big boss. She complained in her heart, but soon picked up the phone. "Boss, go to Star City and find 20 bodyguards and 20 nannies tomorrow." She was startled. Hearing his dangerous and cold tone, she became more nervous. "What's wrong?" Big Boss never liked to order servants and bodyguards around. And Star City, on the surface, it looked like a glamorous and lively casino. In fact, it was recognized as the largest and most mysterious trading place in Connecticut. The bodyguards and nannies that were all mute, but they were extremely expensive. Just one of them would cost millions. Many noble families liked to use such people. But what did Li Siqing need them for? Obviously, Li Siqing would not answer her. He continued, "Contact Luo Zhan and ask him to check the DNA registration system of the Kingstown First Military Hospital." "Yes." Hearing Chungyu's response, Li Siqing hung up and called Li Beixing. The call was quickly connected and he said, "Brother, do me a favor." It was a rare call from Li Siqing. Li Beixing was very surprised and sighed. "Is there something that you can't handle?" Chapter 298. Rong Haiwe. Li Beixing repeated the name and said in an intriguing tone, "He is at the same level as Dad. Are you sure you want to investigate him?" Rong Haiwe's rank was the same as Li Zhao's. The two had always been friendly on the surface, but secretly they were fighting. If Li Beixing rashly investigated Rong Rue and was found out by Rong Haiwe, it would be a lot of trouble. Li Siqing knew this, so after finding out Rong Rue's identity, he did not go further, fearing that it would bring trouble to the Li family. But now, Li Siqing sneered, and the coldness almost froze Li Beixing through the phone. "I want him to know that I am investigating him. Rong Rue must have played a part in this. If it were not for Rong Rue, the truth would have been revealed in the study last time." Tang Minjing and Rong Rue had a very close relationship. Now, Li Siqing did not even know where Rong Rue was hiding and what identity he was using to help Tang Minjing do these heartless things. However, alerting the enemy was the best way to find him and get back at him. Although Rong Haiwe was Li Zhao's opponent, he was a decent and reasonable man. If he noticed that Li Beixing was investigating Rong Rue, he would certainly investigate the reason. At that time, he would naturally be able to find this guy. Li Beixing could hear Li Xiqing's ruthlessness through the phone and sighed. It's a pity that you're not a soldier. Brave, smart, and ruthless. If Li Xiqing was a soldier, he would definitely not be inferior to Li Beixing. Unfortunately, he was a businessman. Okay, since you said so, I will help you. Wait for my good news. Brother, Grandpa is in the hospital. Do you know that? Li Beixing's voice suddenly became serious. When did this happen? Li Xiqing briefly told him what had happened. Li Beixing was furious. Is Mom stupid? This kind of thing. Forget it. Wait for me. I'll go home right away. Li Xiao and Li Beixing arrived at the hospital at the same time. When they met, they did not look very good. Qin Shuhua and Nanny Rong were looking after Captain Li, but Li Xiqing was nowhere to be seen. When Li Xiao saw this, he was enraged. He lowered his voice and roared, "That brat! Get him out here!" Nanny Rong hurried to explain. She just fainted, and Mr. Jiang is looking after her in the next room. Fainted? Li Xiao's anger subsided a little. What happened? Nanny Rong told her what had happened. As she spoke, her voice became more and more choked up. In the end, she cried for Su Qianxi. I did not expect the second young master to be such a person. It is such a pity that the second young mistress is such a good girl. She is such a jerk. However, when he was about to speak, he was shocked to find that all the people around him were from the Li family and were on Li Xiqing's side. Immediately, Nanny Rong wiped her tears and said, "I'm going to see Madame Li." Li Xiao took a deep breath and looked at the old man on the sickbed without hiding anything. Captain Li's eyelids seemed to move. Qin Shuhua walked up to him in surprise and shouted, "Dad, you're awake?" Captain Li had no strength to open his eyes. Seeing Qin Shuhua, he raised his hand and pushed her. He did not have much strength, but his resistance was obvious. Qin Shuhua's face changed, looking embarrassed. Chapter 299. Grandpa, Li Beixing called. Captain Li glanced at Li Beixing and said in a weak voice, "Beixing, call your brother. Get your brother here." Li Beixing nodded and went out of the door. He looked around and finally found Li Xiqing in the left ward. Li Xiqing was sitting by Su Qianxi's bed, holding her hand that was not on the drip. Noticing Li Beixing coming in, he only glanced at him. Nanny Rong was wiping her tears, looking at Li Xiqing with blame. Li Beixing felt that the world was about to change. He walked over and said, "Grandpa is calling you over." He looked a bit angry. Li Xiqing had already expected this. He put down Su Qianxi's hand and stood up. At the moment when he passed by Li Beixing said, "Li Xiqing, are you really with Tang Minjing?" Li Xiqing stopped, clenched his fists, and suddenly felt a strong sense of powerlessness. No one believed him. No one believed him. Squinting, Li Xiqing only said, "She doesn't deserve it." So what's with the DNA test? Dad's name is written on it, and the match is more than 70%. This can't be a coincidence. There's also the seal of the leading military hospital. Before Li Beixing finished, Li Xiqing's phone rang in his pocket. It was Luo Zhan. Picking up the phone, Luo Zhan's voice came through. "Hello, Li Xiqing. Yes, how is it? I found it. There are 2 results in the system. Both have your father's name on them, but one is 0%, and the other is one after the other. But say it. But I just checked the surveillance and found that 2 of the surveillance videos were cut. I can't see when they did the test, and I don't know who Tang Minjing did it with. It's a bit tricky. Rong Rue again? It's most likely him. He's getting more and more skilled. Now even I can't find him, and I don't know who he is. It's so scary. It's like he disappeared from the world. I know who he is. You don't have to worry about this for now. Do me another favor." "What?" "In Jiangzhou, I have a villa." As he spoke, he paused. Li Beixing clearly sensed the sharp light that flashed in the depths of his eyes. The faint scheming glint in his eyes was clear. Li Beixing was shocked, finding it more and more difficult to understand his brother. What was he trying to do at this critical juncture? Li Xiqing suddenly changed the subject and said, "I'll tell you later." Hearing them walking away, Li Xiqing, Li Xiqing, Li Xiqing, and Siching Li 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 and Siching. Su Rong Siching Li Rong Li Siching and said Li sick are sick, Siching said. Are sick, said Su. Rong, Su, Siching, Li. Nanny Rong felt sad. She had seen with her own eyes how estranged Li Siching and his wife were from the beginning, and their relationship had finally improved. However, such a thing happened. Even she could not believe that Li Siching would do such a thing. She did not know how to comfort Su Qianxi. Suddenly, Su Qianxi frowned and looked at the door of the ward. A tall figure stood at the door. His belly was slightly bulging, looking at Su Qianxi with a smile. Chapter 300. Tang Minjing was carrying a bag and a bag of fruit. When she walked in, Nanny Rong looked very strange. What are you doing here? Nanny Rong had never been nice to Tang Minjing, not only because of this. Before this, she did not like Tang Minjing at all. Tang Minjing did not seem to notice Nanny Rong's unfriendliness. She walked in, looked at Su Qianxi and said, Su Qianxi, I heard that you are not well, so I came to see you. Su Qianxi curled her lips and said coldly, Oh, since you have seen me, you can go now. How could Tang Minjing leave? That was not her only purpose. However, seeing Su Qianxi's pale face in bed, Su Qianxi still felt very happy. Taking out a notebook from her bag, Tang Minjing pretended to be guilty and said, Su Qianxi, I know I'm sorry, but I am really with Brother Siching. He said he would give her child the best name. Every day, I can feel the baby waiting for its father in my belly. I believe Annie has already shown you the test results. I hope you can. Hope me for what? Su Qianxi looked at her coldly and curled her lips. However, her expression was very stiff. Abdicate? Let you and Li Siching be together? Tang Minjing did not say anything, but her expression said it all. Su Qianxi suddenly felt ridiculous. Tang Minjing was the mistress, but why was Su Qianxi forcing her, the queen, to leave? I want to see Grandpa. Su Qianxi looked up at Tang Minjing. Can you help me there? Tang Minjing did not expect Su Qianxi to make such a request and felt a bit excited. It happened that she did not want to keep the bastard in her belly. If Su Qianxi could help her, then she would be screwed. Tang Minjing smiled and was about to speak when Su Qianxi continued, By the way, tell Grandpa and Dad about this. Looking at her belly, Su Qianxi said, After all, your child is his. He will take good care of you. Hearing that, Tang Minjing was a bit tempted. Yes, now everyone thought that the child in her belly was Li Siching's. Although Brother Siching did not admit it. Since even Su Qianxi thought so, why didn't she use it to get married and then find a way to get rid of him? Tang Minjing's heart warmed up. She nodded and helped Su Qianxi down. Nanny Rong was shocked and said, Madam, let me do it. It's okay. Tang Minjing is my good friend. She won't hurt me. Then she smiled at Tang Minjing. Right, Tang Minjing? Tang Minjing felt even weirder, but seeing her innocent smile, she felt relieved and nodded. We should help each other. Let's go. Tang Minjing helped Su Qianxi out of the door. People were coming and going in the corridor. There were many patients and nurses. Just at the door, Su Qianxi let go of her hand and called Tang Minjing. Tang Minjing was in a good mood. She looked up and said, Yes? However, just as he finished speaking, a hand grabbed his hair and slapped him hard on the face. Slap! The crisp sound echoed in the corridor, attracting everyone's attention. Chapter 301. Tang Minjing subconsciously wanted to dodge, but her long hair was in Su Qianxi's grasp. Seeing Su Qianxi's hand coming down, Tang Minjing wanted to resist. However, before she raised her hand, she was hit by Su Qianxi. Then, the second, the third, the fourth, Su Qianxi hit Tang Minjing's face from both sides like crazy, which attracted the attention of the people around. Shameless, shameless, shameless. Su Qianxi yelled as she hit Su Qianxi. Nanny Rong was shocked but did not try to stop her. Well done. That's how it should be. Nanny Rong wiped her tears and looked at Su Qianxi coldly. Li Siching was talking to Grandpa, and the door was open. When he heard Su Qianxi's voice, he panicked and rushed out of the room. At a glance, he saw Su Qianxi drawing her bow at a figure. Shameless, shameless. Su Qianxi's voice was sobbing. Li Xiqing's heart skipped a beat and pulled her down. Su Qianxi's hands were red. Feeling someone was pulling her, she struggled like crazy. However, realizing it was Li Xiqing, she stopped struggling. All the strength in her body seemed to be drained. Collapsing in his arms, she burst into tears. Li Xiqing held her tightly in his arms and whispered, "It's okay. It's okay." Tang Minjing's face was already red and swollen. Su Qianxi was caught off guard and lost the chance to fight back. A kind-hearted person came up to see Tang Minjing and exclaimed, "Oh my God, look at her. Go and see. It's terrible. I'll take you." However, Tang Minjing did not appreciate it. She pushed the kind-hearted person away and stared at Su Qianxi and Li Xiqing coldly. Su Qianxi was held in Li Xiqing's arms, crying like a child, as if it was her who had just been hit. "Don't cry, don't cry. Grandpa will be sad." Li Xiqing hugged her as if he was comforting a child, caring for her and whispering gently. Tang Minjing's heart ached, even more than her face. It turned out that Li Xiqing could be like this, sobbing. Su Qianxi said, "Want to go home? Honey, I want to go home." "Okay, let's go home. I'll take you home." "Hubby, you love me, right?" "Yes, I love you, only you." "Hubby, you won't accept that woman, right?" "No, I only want you." Every word was like a death sentence for Tang Minjing. Su Qianxi looked satisfied in his arms. Burying her head in his arms, she said, "I want to go home. Honey, take me home." "Okay, I'll take you home." Li Xiqing felt his heart was about to be torn apart. He glanced at Tang Minjing coldly and said to Nanny Rong, "Take Miss Tang to the doctor. The medical fees are under my name. Be careful. Didn't she say that the child in her stomach was his? Then let's do another DNA test. I'll watch with my own eyes." However, in Su Qianxi's ears, the meaning was completely different. She loosened her grip on his sleeve and lay motionless. Li Xiqing carried her in his arms and quickly left the hospital. Putting her on the passenger seat, Li Xiqing carefully fastened the seatbelt for her. However, he was caught off guard and was slapped hard in the face. Chapter 302. Li Xiqing's heart felt like it had been cut into pieces at this moment, bloody and unscathed. Gazing at her deeply, he fastened his seatbelt, closed the door, and sat in the driver's seat. Turning the steering wheel, he pursed his lips and did not say a word. Through the rearview mirror, he could clearly see the red handprint on his face, which was a bit dazzling. She leaned against the back of the seat with her eyes closed. Tears flowed down her face, and her hands hung limply on her lap. Silence. In the car, there was only the sound of each other's breathing. When they got home, he carried her all the way upstairs and put her on the bed. They did not say a word. Lying in bed, she opened her eyes and looked at him. At the same time, he looked at her as well. Their eyes met, and there were different emotions in each other's eyes. The two of them spoke at the same time, but soon shut up at the same time. Li Xiqing did not speak, looking at her with his cold and deep eyes. Su Qianxi's eyes were dry. Looking at him, her eyes were a bit empty. She opened her mouth and said, "Let's get a divorce." His eyes suddenly narrowed. He clenched his fists and blurted out, "No way. Let's get a divorce." With just 3 words, Li Xiqing had completely destroyed the calmness he had been maintaining. Propping his hands on the edge of the bed, he looked down at her and said firmly, "That is not my child. That woman must have done something to it. Tomorrow, I'll go to her for a paternity test." Su Qianxi chuckled and pushed him. "Stop joking. If she can do something, can't you? Mr. Li, are you kidding me?" Li Xiqing felt like thousands of arrows were piercing his heart. He growled, "Su Qianxi, yeah, I'm listening." Su Qianxi moved on the bed and found herself a comfortable position. Although her eyes were red and swollen, the sarcastic smile on her face was clear. Su Qianxi's attitude hurt Li Xiqing even more. She did not believe him. "Tang Minjing loves you wholeheartedly. She has you in her heart. You know that, don't you?" She would remember what they said in the car for the rest of her life. Li Xiqing did not expect that she would use his words against him. He retorted, "I just said it out of anger, but I'm very serious." She looked at him, her eyes full of sadness. "It's too tiring. Being with you, it's really so tiring." She should not have expected that. A man like Li Xiqing should not belong to her. He and Tang Minjing were a match made in heaven. It was because of her that Tang Minjing could only be a mistress, pregnant with his illegitimate child. However, how could Li Xiqing's child be a bastard? Even if Tang Minjing was willing, Qin Shuhua would not agree. Rather than being defeated like a loser, it was better to strike first and gain the upper hand. At the very least, she could preserve the last shred of dignity that she had in her previous life and this life, right? However, Li Xiqing clenched his fist tighter and hit the edge of the bed. Impossible. You can forget about it. I will prove to you that I have never done anything wrong to you. I have never touched her. That child has nothing to do with me. Chapter 303. With a loud bang, Su Qianxi's heart skipped a beat. Looking in the direction of his departure, she was in a daze. After a while, she took out her cell phone and dialed a number. Song Yifan had just boarded the plane. Before he could sit down, he received a call from Su Qianxi. This was the first time that Su Qianxi had called him, and Song Yifan was pleasantly surprised. He immediately answered the call and called Su Qianxi. Hearing Song Yifan's voice, Su Qianxi's helpless heart suddenly seemed to have found support. She burst into tears and said, "Dad." Her voice was choked with sobs, which shocked Song Yifan. He quickly asked, "What's wrong? What happened?" Su Qianxi could not say a word and began to cry. Song Yifan panicked and asked, "What's wrong? Tell me slowly." Su Qianxi calmed herself down and said, "Can I stay at your place for a few days?" Okay. Where are you? Dad will pick you up. Don't cry and don't run around." Song Yifan took down the small luggage that he had just put on the plane. Facing the confused look and shouts of the stewardess, he got off the plane and hurried out. Su Qianxi did not wait for Song Yifan in the house. Instead, she stood at the intersection where Li Xiqing would not run into her. There were only a few pieces of clothes in her suitcase. Song Yifan took a taxi and saw Su Qianxi. He immediately asked the driver to stop. Seeing Su Qianxi's red and swollen eyes, he did not dare to ask more. He put her luggage in the car and took it to his own place. When she received Li Xiqing's call, Tang Minjing was applying medicine in the hospital. Tang Minjing had never dreamed that he would ask for her by name. This was the first time since she graduated from college. Although Su Qianxi's face was swollen, Tang Minjing still squeezed out a smile to welcome this unexpected surprise. Li Xiao and Li Beixing followed Li Xiqing. When Tang Minjing saw them, she immediately could not keep her smile. She forced a smile and asked, "Brother Xiqing, what can I do for you?" Li Xiqing looked at Tang Minjing. Li Xiqing looked at her coldly and said, "Come with me." Feeling something was wrong, Tang Minjing asked uneasily, "What's wrong? Can't you just say it here? Don't make me repeat myself." Tang Minjing's eyelids twitched, and she stood up immediately. Li Xiqing's attitude toward her had not changed at all. It had been more than 3 months since she had been so close to him. She felt indescribably close to him. Following Li Xiqing, the more she walked, the more familiar the surroundings seemed to her. This place. She had been here yesterday and the day before. This was the genetics department. Pausing, Tang Minjing had a bad feeling and asked, "Brother Xiqing, why did you bring me here?" "Blood test." At the same time, Chengyu had taken out a document and said, "Boss, I got it. Yesterday's results." Li Xiqing took it and flipped through it. It was the same as what he had seen in the afternoon. Curling his lips, Li Xiqing's eyes seemed to be filled with frost. "What's with this result?" Tang Minjing's heart was pounding. She forced herself to say, "What do you mean? The evidence is right in front of you, and you still want to deny it? Then what about this one?" Chapter 304. Tang Minjing acted as if she had caught a hot potato. She immediately threw the results out and shouted, "Li Xiqing, what do you mean?" Her voice was so loud that it was deafening. Li Xiao and Li Beixing did not expect Tang Minjing to be so agitated. Tang Minjing gasped and said, "You can leave me, but why do you have to doubt me like this? Am I that kind of person in your eyes?" Li Xiqing stared at her coldly. Chengyu stood behind Li Xiqing and pouted disdainfully. Of course she was. Chengyu had already seen what kind of person Tang Minjing was when they were in Australia. If people wanted to belittle themselves, nothing could stop them. Whether it's true or not, we'll know after another test. Li Xiao's voice was full of authority. He looked at her and said, "Both have my name on them, but the two sets of data are not the same at all. Miss Tang, can you explain which set is mine?" Tang Minjing's face turned pale. For a moment, she did not know how to explain. At this time, a nurse came out. Seeing so many people, she suddenly became nervous and said weakly, "Miss Chung." Chung Yu heard the call and turned her head. The nurse looked nervous and said, "The amniotic fluid sample taken from Miss Tang yesterday seems to be missing. I have been looking for it for a long time, but I can't find it." And Mr. Li, hearing this, everyone's face changed. Only Tang Minjing looked indescribably relaxed. Li Xiqing turned his head and stared at Tang Minjing with a pair of sharp and cold eyes, as if he wanted to freeze her alive. Tang Minjing shivered and subconsciously took a step back. At the same time, a doctor in a white coat passed by. Wearing a big black-rimmed glasses, he glanced at Tang Minjing and walked past her without a moment's pause. "Then I'll take it again." Li Xiqing's cold voice came out, without any warmth. The doctor in the white coat looked back and glanced at Li Xiqing coldly. Li Xiqing noticed his gaze and also looked over. However, before he could even see Li Xiqing's face, the doctor disappeared at the end of the corridor. Hearing that, Tang Minjing turned pale and yelled, "No, you don't dare?" Chung Yu provoked. No. Tang Minjing cried hysterically. "You can't do it. If they did it at this time, it would be no different from slapping their faces." She wanted face, and so did the Tang family. The news of her pregnancy had spread all over Kingstown. If it was not Li Xiqing's child, then absolutely not. The nurse also quickly came over and said, "The fetus is less than 4 months old. It's already very risky to do an amniocentesis. If you do it again, you will definitely miscarry." Hearing that, Tang Minjing was relieved. At the same time, she felt a sharp pain in her abdomen. Holding her belly, she bent over and turned pale. The nurse was shocked and quickly came over to support her. "Oh my God, hurry up and push the bed over." No one saw that at the end of the corridor, the doctor who had just walked past leaned against the wall with a cold and expressionless face. Chapter 305. Tang Minjing's pregnancy had been affected. It was hard for her to calm down after the ups and downs. "You will never be able to pay me back." When she was standing at the door of the genetics department, she could still hear the voice behind her. Tang Minjing could not help but break out in a cold sweat. That guy was too bold. The door of the ward was suddenly opened, which startled Tang Minjing. Jolted, Zhang Xian abruptly raised his head. A man in a white coat came in. He was not very tall, about 178 centimeters. Wearing a big black-rimmed glasses, he looked serious. Tang Minjing was shocked to see him and exclaimed, "Why are you here?" The young man walked in, took off his glasses, and looked at her face with pity. "That woman is so cruel. She is so hateful." Tang Minjing pushed him away in shock and said, "Why are you here?" Li Xiqing admitted that he knows you. "If he recognizes you, neither of us will have a good ending." "What are you afraid of?" "I have hacked all the surveillance cameras. Even if Li Xiqing has 3 heads and 6 arms, what could he do to me? But then again, if it were not for me, you would have been caught by Li Xiqing for another paternity test. At that time, you will not be the only one ruined." Tang Minjing, of course, knew this and said, "Didn't you say you went home? Why are you still here? Where did you come?" "Well, I sneaked out." Rong Rue pulled a stool and sat down. "Li Xiqing has his eyes on my uncle. My uncle just called me and told me to go home. I'm not afraid." He was not afraid, but Tang Minjing was very worried. She said, "Do you think you are so powerful? If it were not for you secretly plotting against Li Xiqing, he would not even know who you are. Otherwise, do you think you could get away with it? At this time, you'd better listen to your uncle and go home. If Li Xiqing catches you, so what if he catches me? What can he do?" Rong Rue looked disdainful. "There is a Li Xiao above Li Xiqing. Li Xiao's rank is the same as my uncle's. His grandfather is a general, and so is my grandfather. I might not lose to him. Minjing, I really don't understand. What's so good about him? To think that you can't forget him and are even willing to give birth to his child. Although the child in her belly was not Li Siqing's, it was enough to make Rong Rue jealous. What are you going to do now? We can't keep it forever, right? Rong Rue glanced at her abdomen meaningfully. If word gets out that this child is not Li Siqing's, it will not only ruin you, but also your father and your entire family. Gritting her teeth, Tang Minjing looked at him and whispered, "Of course not. I will use Su Qianxi to get rid of it. Then I can put the blame on Su Qianxi and clear my name. Su Qianxi will definitely suffer. It's good that you know. Public opinion was the most terrifying thing. Gossip is a fearful thing. Got it. Go away and don't come back again," Tang Minjing urged, full of fear. Rong Rue felt a little bored. He pouted, put his glasses back on, stood up, and walked toward the door. However, as soon as he opened the door, he saw 2 rows of tall men. Chapter 306. Song Yifan did not live in the center of Kingstown. Instead, he lived in a mid-range neighborhood near the center. It was quiet and peaceful, and the neighborhood was very clean. On the 16th floor, after Su Qianxi entered the door, Song Yifan quickly cleaned up a room for her. It was a simple 2-bedroom apartment with a modern style, very Song Yifan style. While Song Yifan was cleaning up the room, Su Qianxi went into the kitchen and rummaged around. She found nothing. The fridge was empty, and many appliances had been powered off. Thinking of the suitcase Song Yifan was carrying, Su Qianxi suddenly realized that, was he going on a long trip? In the end, he was called back by her, and as soon as he came back, he helped her a lot. Su Qianxi felt touched and guilty. When she closed the fridge door, Song Yifan happened to come out. "It's done. I'll help you move it in." Su Qianxi looked at him, nodded, and followed him into the house. The room was not big, less than 1/3 of the size of the house. However, it was clean and cozy, and there was the smell of air freshener in the air. Song Yifan felt a bit embarrassed and said, "It's a bit small. You can stay here for now. I'll get you a bigger house later." Su Qianxi smiled and whispered, "Dad, why are you so nice to me?" She was clearly not his biological daughter. Clearly, he could have completely ignored her. However, Song Yifan really treated her like a daughter, so considerate and warm. She just glanced at his suitcase, which had just passed the security check, and the date was today. He came back from the airport. Song Yifan's eyes became gentle again. He smiled and said, "Silly girl, you are my daughter." Su Qianxi's heart suddenly felt like there was an extra stove, so warm that her eyes couldn't help turning red. "Don't cry. You don't look good anymore." Song Yifan felt sorry for her. "You must be hungry. I'll take you to dinner. What do you want to eat?" Su Qianxi shook her head. "I have no appetite. I don't want to eat." "No matter how unhappy you are, you can't torture yourself. Let's go. I'll take you to eat my favorite food." Song Yifan took her downstairs. After walking for about 3 minutes, they saw a noodle house. The noodle house was very simple, and the decorations were a little old, but the hygiene was very clean. An old man was sitting at the front desk. The old man was watching TV with a big snow-white cat in his arms. Seeing them come in, a pair of blue eyes looked at them and meowed. "Meow." The old man raised his head and chuckled. "Xiao Song, you're here. Didn't you say you were going to London today? You didn't go? Something came up, so I came back." Song Yifan was obviously very familiar with the old man. "Let me introduce you. This is my daughter." The old man looked surprised. "Oh, you have a daughter? Aren't you single?" "Goddaughter." "Hey, she looks a little familiar. Is she Lee's granddaughter-in-law? What's his name again?" "That old guy is already so old, but he still runs around." "Lee Sun," she said. Yes, that old fellow. Are you that Sue?" "Yes." She was a bit embarrassed. She seemed to have a tag that she couldn't get rid of. Chapter 307. The old man's face showed that he had expected it. He clapped his hands and said, "Oh, that old man is so lucky. His grandchildren are so capable, and he can marry such a beautiful granddaughter-in-law. Are you the wife of the second son?" "Yes, of those kids, the one I admire the most is the second son." His whole family is in the military. He went into business despite everyone's opposition and did a good job. You are so lucky to marry a man like that. Not a bad guy. Su Qianxi smiled reluctantly. Song Yifan gently pushed her inside and said to the old man, "Same old rule, give me 2 servings." "Okay." The old man immediately turned his attention and shouted, "2 servings of Song's rule." Su Qianxi heard that and immediately choked. What the hell was Song's rule? Seeing her smile, Song Yifan knew that he did not bring her here for nothing. He explained, "I come here often, and they all know me. That's why they named my favorite food." Because he often came here, the shop's business was booming. After all, Song Yifan's name was very useful. Soon, the dish was served. It was a bowl of fried paste noodles. The sauce was very fragrant. Su Qianxi broke a pair of chopsticks and slowly ate it. Song Yifan also looked hungry and ate quickly, but Su Qianxi took small bites and did not have much of an appetite. It was already past 8 o'clock in the evening. Su Qianxi's phone rang and kept vibrating on the table. There was only one word, honey. Su Qianxi turned off the sound and let it ring. After the first call, Su Qianxi turned off the phone and put it aside. Song Yifan saw it clearly. He seemed to be eating the noodles and asked, "Did you have a fight?" Su Qianxi did not speak and took a bite of the noodles. Li Xiqing was going crazy. When he got home, he looked everywhere but did not find Su Qianxi. She did not answer his calls and eventually turned off her phone. Su Qianxi was becoming more and more introverted and timid. She did not have any friends or close classmates. Kingstown was so big. Where would she go? The first place that came to his mind was school. Leaving this matter to Chengyu. The second place that came to his mind was Lu Yihan. Thinking that she was probably with Lu Yihan, Li Xiqing's heart felt like it was on fire. He drove to Kingstown First Hospital, found Lu Yihan's ward, and directly broke in. Lu Yihan was on an 4-drip with a computer in front of him. The hand that was not on the 4-drip was holding the mouse and clicking quickly. Seeing Li Xiqing coming in, Lu Yihan was surprised and then sneered. "Mr. Li, how have you been?" "What about her?" "Her?" Lu Yihan immediately thought of Su Qianxi. "Are you looking for Qianqian?" "Qianqian." The intimate address quickly ignited Li Xiqing's anger. "Did she come to see you today? With such a husband who doesn't even give her the right to make friends, how dare she come to me?" Lu Yihan's hands stopped moving. "She's gone." Li Xiqing pursed his lips and clenched his fists. Although she didn't want to admit it, she might have run away from home. He didn't give anyone an explanation. Chapter 308. Picking up the phone, she called Song Yifan. Song Yifan did not answer the phone on the way downstairs and into the car. On the 4th call, he finally answered. Song Yifan sounded the same as usual. "Hello, father-in-law Song." Song Yifan immediately became alert. Looking at Su Qianxi, who was pushing the shopping cart, he stopped. "Is my wife with you?" Su Qianxi turned around and saw Song Yifan holding the phone, looking embarrassed. She knew it was him. Shaking her head at Song Yifan, Su Qianxi pursed her lips and looked like she was about to cry. Song Yifan was scared and quickly said, "No, why is Su Qianxi with me? Is she not at home?" Well, Li Xiqing suddenly felt powerless. They had been married for half a year, but he found that he did not know her at all. She did not go to Lu Yihan or Song Yifan. She was not at school or at home. At this critical moment, she could not be at the old house. So where would she go? "What's wrong? Did you two have a fight?" Song Yifan asked with concern. "It's okay. If you have any news about her, remember to tell me. I am looking for her. I have something very important to tell her." "Oh, okay. If I see her, I will tell her that you're going crazy looking for her." "Thank you." Song Yifan hung up the phone. Seeing Su Qianxi's complicated expression, he sighed and said, "He is looking for you." "Okay." Su Qianxi did not react much. She turned around and took a vegetable from the shopping cart. "Buy some food at home. I will cook for you in the next few days." A few days? That was great. He had never tried living with his daughter before. However, at the same time, Song Yifan felt some sympathy for Li Xiqing. Silently mourning for him for 3 seconds, he followed Li Xiqing. Seeing Li Xiqing walk out, Lu Yihan also picked up the phone to call Su Qianxi. However, her phone was turned off. That was what he had expected. Moving the mouse, he opened the chat window with her and quickly typed, "Call me back." But after thinking about it, he still made a call to Yu Lily. Su Qianxi did not have many friends, but Yu Lily was one of them. Would she go to Yu Lily? Yu Lily's whole body trembled, and she screamed under the man's push. Oming loved her lascivious look. He held her waist, turned around, and continued to fight. The phone on the bedside table rang. Yu Lily looked sideways and saw a string of numbers. There was no name, but when she saw the number, Yu Lily was so excited that her heart clenched. Oming let out a low sigh, bent over and scolded, "Bad guy, what do you want?" Half an hour later, the flames of war finally subsided. After Oming entered the bathroom, Yu Lily got up and called Lu Yihan back. "Hello." Yu Lily's voice was very low, but she was secretly delighted. "Why are you looking for me?" Lu Yihan looked at the time and said grumpily, "What took you so long? What are you doing?" "It's none of your business." "What?" "Hurry up and fart." Qian is missing. Li Xiqing is looking for her. Did she go to you? Yu Lily felt a dull pain in her heart. I knew it. I knew it. Chapter 309. With a snort, Yu Lily resisted the urge to throw the phone away and said, "It's none of my business that she disappeared. She doesn't have many friends. She only has a good relationship with me and you in Kingstown. If she didn't come to me, she might have gone to you." "No, she didn't come to me." Yu Lily was a little annoyed. "Is there anything else? If not, I'll hang up." "Okay." After hanging up the phone, Yu Lily got up and turned around. Unexpectedly, she found someone standing behind her. Yu Lily was scared and almost fell. After she recovered, she shouted, "Damn, Oming, are you crazy? You scare me to death." Oming raised his eyebrows and pursed his lips. Naked, he walked toward her and asked, "Who were you talking to on the phone just now?" "Friends. Boyfriend." Yu Lily gave him a big stare. "It's none of your business. Just mind your own business." She glanced down and found that he still wanted to continue after the shower. She turned her head, rolled up the quilt, and said, "I'm going to take a shower." "Don't rush. Do it again." "No, you said it was only once." "The last time. This time it's true." Oming pulled her back and threw her on the bed. Yu Lily was unable to fight back, so she gave in and let him have his way again. After that, Yu Lily was so tired that her bones were soft. She didn't want to move at all. "Yu Lily." "Yes." Yu Lily didn't even bother to lift her eyelids. Oming put his big hands around her and said seriously, "Let's get married." Yu Lily was scared and immediately got up from him. She looked at him incredulously. "Are you crazy?" Oming looked at the bruises on her chest. His eyes darkened, and he smiled wickedly. He touched her face with his big hands and said seriously, "I'm not crazy. Marry me, and I will make you the young madam of the O family." Didn't she love money? The O family was rich, but Yu Lily looked like she had seen a ghost. She got up, got out of bed, and said quickly, "I'm going to take a shower." Oming glanced at the water stains on his body and rolled to his feet. He followed closely behind her and walked in. Yu Lily saw him come in and said with disgust, "Get out. Still want to scram?" Oming deliberately twisted her meaning. "If you're not tired, we can do in the bathroom. How about trying to develop a new position?" "Go away." Yu Lily threw the shower head at him. "I was afraid that you would King come every day, every day." Furthermore, he had taken it several times a day, yet he did not see him nourishing his kidneys. Sooner or later, he would suffer from kidney deficiency and Mediterranean Sea. Oming took the shower head, stretched out his hand, and pressed her against the wall. He poured the water on them and said, "I'm serious." "I'm serious too." "Scram. I'm talking about marriage." Yu Lily was suddenly speechless. Looking at his rare seriousness, she sneered, "With your identity as Master O, I don't deserve you. I don't need you to be worthy of me. It's fine as long as I like you." Yu Lily thought it was ridiculous, so she pressed closer and asked, "Do you like me or my body?" Oming pressed his body against hers and laughed evilly. He pushed his thigh between her legs and whispered, "I like everything about you. Marry me, and everything I have will be yours." Yu Lily was suddenly entered, and she groaned. Chapter 3:10. When they all finished showering, it was already more than an hour later. Yu Lily lay there motionlessly, allowing Ming to help her wash and dress her. Finally, she nestled comfortably on the bed and found a comfortable position to lie down. With his upper body bare, Ming lit a cigar and sat on the small armchair next to the bed, smoking leisurely. Looking at Yu Lily sleeping soundly, Ming felt indescribably annoyed. What was wrong with him? Why did this woman not like him at all? Now he was offering such a big price just to keep her by his side. Was this bait not big enough? Although the O family was not famous, they were absolutely rich. Didn't this woman love money? Why was she not willing to marry him? Ming could not figure it out. The thick smoke blinded his eyes. After a long puff, he put out the cigar. The phone on the bed rang. Yu Lily impatiently pulled the quilt over her head. It was Li Siqing. Looking at the time, it was past 11 p.m. Why was he calling at this time? Ming picked up the phone and sat on the sofa with his legs crossed. Hello, Mr. Li, what can I do for you? Are you with your woman? Why are you thinking about my woman in the middle of the night? My wife is missing. It is very likely that she went to see your woman. After all, Kingstown was so big. It was impossible for her to disappear into thin air. He had searched all the hotels, checked all the records of the stations, and even went to the Su family's house, but did not find her. Unfortunately, my woman has been with me the entire day. She hasn't been separated at all. Okay, I see. Ming heard the disappointment in Li Siqing's voice and whistled teasingly. Did your wife run away from home because she couldn't stand you? Li Siqing's face became gloomier. He did not answer and directly hung up. Less than a second after the phone was hung up, a call came in. It was Chengyu. Boss, according to your order, we have got the traffic surveillance. Mrs. seems to have left with Mr. Song. Song Yifan. Yes. Li Siqing suddenly felt like a fool, being fooled by Su Qianxi. He thought that Song Yifan would not lie to him about this. He thought that Song Yifan would at least have some sense as an elder. But it was Li Siqing's voice. Hearing this, Chengyu was stunned. This was the first time she heard Big Boss swear. Although it was rude, but what was with that masculine smell? Ugh, so violent. So sexy. You go back first. I'll call you if there's anything. All right. She had cried all day and was exhausted. She thought that she would fall asleep soon after lying in bed, but there were things in her mind that kept her from falling asleep. The more he lay down, the more awake he became. He got up, opened the door, and walked out. Song Yifan was on the phone and was surprised to see her. She waved her hand to let him continue and walked barefoot to the sofa in the living room. However, before he sat down, the doorbell rang. When her snow-white feet touched the cold ground, she couldn't help but curl up. She walked to the door and tiptoed to look through the peephole. There was no one there. Chapter 3:11. Seeing him, Su Qianxi's first reaction was to pull her hand back and close the door. Li Siqing reacted faster and grabbed the door to prevent her from closing it. Su Qianxi pushed the door twice, but it did not budge. Annoyed, she yelled, "Dad, there's a hooligan." Startled, Song Yifan turned around and was surprised to see it was Li Siqing. However, he did not care and continued to speak fluent English. It seemed that they were talking about something important. "Put on your shoes," Li Siqing said coldly with displeasure, looking at Su Qianxi's feet that were curled up because of the cold floor. Ignoring him, Su Qianxi reached out to push him, but her hand was firmly held by him. Holding her hand, Li Siqing tried to force his way in. Su Qianxi panicked and yelled, "Dad, help me." Song Yifan was shocked. He quickly said goodbye to his friend on the phone and hung up. Li Siqing and Su Qianxi were still in a stalemate. Exasperated, Su Qianxi saw Song Yifan and said, "Don't let him in." However, Li Siqing reacted faster and directly grabbed her waist. As Su Qianxi yelped, he picked her up and closed the door. They successfully broke in. Su Qianxi could not fight back at all. Feeling a bit amused, Song Yifan smiled helplessly. Being picked up, Su Qianxi blushed at her uselessness. Seeing that Song Yifan was smiling, she became angry. "You did nothing to save me. Li Siqing threw her on the sofa, picked up her feet, and put them in his palm. Looking at Song Yifan, he said, "Father-in-law Song, I'm here to take my wife home." Su Qianxi wanted to take her feet back, but he held them firmly. "Let me go," she said angrily. "Don't move," he said firmly. Li Siqing's palm was very warm, and the coldness on her feet quickly faded. Su Qianxi looked away from him and yelled at Song Yifan, "You betrayed me." Song Yifan sat down on the sofa not far from them and said innocently, "It's not me. I didn't say anything." Li Siqing pursed his lips and rubbed her feet with his big hand. He said casually, "I found it myself. Let's go home." Su Qianxi pulled her foot back, stood up from the sofa, and went to her room. Li Siqing wanted to follow them, but Song Yifan stopped him. "Kid, let's talk." Su Qianxi slammed the door and locked it. She got under the covers and listened to what was going on outside. However, the door was so soundproof that she could not hear anything at all. Stealthily, he put on his shoes and opened a corner of the door. Only then did he hear some movements. "I will take care of it." The voice was intermittent, and Su Qianxi could not hear it clearly. Stretching out her head to hear more, she heard footsteps. He quickly retracted his head, closed and locked the door, and crawled into bed. Knock, knock. Someone knocked on the door. Su Qianxi covered her head with the quilt and pretended to be dead. "Su Qianxi," he left. It was Song Yifan's voice. Su Qianxi paused and took off the quilt, feeling a bit sad. She felt wronged and unwilling. What the hell? Wasn't he here to take her home? Was he leaving? Su Qianxi felt so sad that she wanted to cry. He really did not care about her at all. Chapter 312. Holding back the urge to cry, Su Qianxi said, "I see. Dad, you should go to bed too." "I'm going to bed." "Get up and have a glass of milk. I've heated it up. Drink it before you go to bed," said Song Yifan. Su Qianxi did not want to get up, but she did not want to let him down. She stood up, walked to the door barefoot, and opened it. However, it was not Song Yifan who she saw, but her first reaction was to close the door. However, Li Siqing moved faster and blocked the door. Su Qianxi slammed the door hard, and there was a strong resistance when the door was closed. Bang! Ah! Li Siqing let out an exaggerated scream. Su Qianxi was shocked and quickly let go of the door. Seeing Li Siqing holding his fingers, she was scared and held his hand. It was already bruised. Feeling distressed, she asked, "What do you do? Does it hurt?" Li Siqing did not answer, but held her with the other hand that was not injured. Su Qianxi was startled. Looking up, she saw a pair of eyes as deep as a lake. Suddenly annoyed, she struggled to push him away. However, how could she resist his strength? No matter how hard she tried, he did not move. Su Qianxi was annoyed. "Let go. My hand hurts." Li Siqing looked at her pitifully. "It's all your fault. You still want to drive me away. You are so heartless." Su Qianxi felt a bit guilty and immediately shut up. Looking down at his fingers, she found that they were bruised, which looked a bit scary. It looked like it was hurting a lot. "What do you do? Does it hurt?" "It hurts," Li Siqing complained. Su Qianxi felt a bit distressed. However, seeing the smirk in his eyes, she immediately turned around and yelled, "You are a man. You are so fragile. How dare you say that?" Song Yifan did not know whether to laugh or cry. Could a man not get hurt? A man would also hurt when his fingers were pinched. However, Li Siqing said, "Yes. That's why I need my wife to comfort me." His pitiful tone made Su Qianxi feel bad. She looked at him again and asked in a low voice, "Does it hurt?" "Yes, it hurts." Unable to watch it anymore, Song Yifan immediately turned around and left. Su Qianxi took his hand, walked into the bathroom, turned on the faucet, and flushed it. Blood clots are difficult to treat, but cold water can relieve the pain. Li Siqing's eyes became softer. Looking down, he found that she was still not wearing shoes. Hugging her with his big hand, she exclaimed and heard his voice. "Step on my foot." Su Qianxi looked down and found that her snow-white feet were a little red. It was cold. She didn't stand on ceremony and stepped on his foot, turned off the tap, and said, "Let go." "What are you doing?" "Wear your shoes." "Why are you wearing shoes?" "Go get some ice from the fridge." "Oh." He took her in his arms and walked to the kitchen happily. Opening the fridge, he asked, "How much do you want?" "One," she said. "And a towel." "What can I get a towel?" Bathroom. Holding her in his arms, he went into the bathroom and took out a towel. "What about now?" Li Siqing looked down at her. He found that she was blushing like an apple. Hearing his words, she said weakly, "The sofa." Chapter 313. Su Qianxi blushed even more and let him carry her to the sofa. She took the thing in his hand, wrapped the ice in a towel, and put on his hand. His big hand was grabbed by her soft palm. The cold feeling came from her fingers and went straight to the tip of his heart. Li Siqing's eyes became softer and whispered, "I found Rongrui." Su Qianxi paused, looked up at him, and was slightly surprised. "Rongrui?" "Yes, he and Tang Minjing planned to abort the child and then frame you. You'd better not contact Tang Minjing during this time." Su Qianxi was slightly shocked. This was indeed Tang Minjing's style, but how did he know? "You were eavesdropping?" "Eavesdropping?" Li Siqing did not like the word eavesdropping. He frowned and corrected her. "To be exact, I was eavesdropping. Unfortunately, there was no recording. Otherwise, if he played it to her at this time, he would be completely cleared of suspicion." Su Qianxi blinked and looked puzzled. Li Siqing explained, "Rong Rue pretended to be a doctor and went to catch up with Tang Minjing when she was in the hospital. Therefore, she was caught red-handed by him." "You arrested Rong Rue?" With Li Siqing's personality, he would definitely not let it go. Sure enough, Li Siqing looked at her with admiration and nodded. "Yes, locked in a secret place." "Ah, that's not good. If his family finds out, Rong Rue was from the capital." Although she did not know what he did for a living, when Shengyu gave birth to a child in her previous lifetime, his family sent a dozen people, surrounding an old man who personally gave Chengyu's daughter a name. That was enough to rival the Li family. What I want is to let them know. Daring to break into the Li family's territory and hurt his people, Li Siqing did not intend to let him go from the beginning. The power of the Rong family and the Li family had always been equal. Now it was the Rong family who offended them first. How could they not fight back? Su Qianxi was not particularly smart, and she knew nothing about politics. However, hearing what he said, she was relieved and asked, "Then, what about Tang Minjing?" This name had always been a thorn in Su Qianxi's heart. As time passed, it became deeper and deeper. In the hospital, Li Siqing still wanted to say something, but his phone suddenly rang. It was Chengyu. "Boss, Mr. Rong pretended to have a seizure. I called the doctor, but he injured the doctor and took your mother hostage." She picked up the phone and heard Chengyu's voice. However, he did not turn on the speaker, so she could not hear what Chengyu said. Li Siqing frowned more and more. In the end, his eyes darkened. "My mother." "Yes. What is she doing there?" She paused and said weakly, "I thought you asked her to come." Li Siqing's eyes darkened, and he said in a low voice, "I know. Try to calm him down. I'll be right there." "All right." Hanging up the phone, Li Siqing got off the sofa under Su Qianxi's surprised gaze. "Wait a minute." Li Siqing looked down and rubbed her head. He said gently, "I have something to do. You rest here for a while. I will pick you up when I'm done." "Oh." Although she did not know what had happened, seeing that Li Siqing was in a hurry, it must be something serious. However, didn't he say he would take her home? Chapter 314. Su Qianxi was a bit disappointed. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. Can I go with you?" However, he swallowed the words back. "Yes?" Su Qianxi shook her head and said, "Go ahead." He was a bit reluctant to take her home. However, thinking that Qin Shuhua might have been kidnapped by Rong Rue, he felt a bit uneasy. He said gently, "Go to bed early. It's too late. I'll pick you up tomorrow." "It's okay. You go ahead." Su Qianxi stood up and pushed him to the door. Li Siqing looked down at her feet and complained, "Why do you hate wearing shoes so much? In ancient times, you would be called a slut." Then he picked her up. "It's getting cold. Remember to wear shoes at all times." "Okay." Su Qianxi was put in bed and watched him leave. When the door was closed, Su Qianxi's heart suddenly became empty. She didn't want him to go, even though she had proposed a divorce to him today. But when she saw that he had come to find her, she regretted it. However, at the same time, she was also thankful for his opposition and his determination. That's it. Su Qianxi adjusted her sleeping position and closed her eyes. However, she could not fall asleep no matter how she tossed and turned in bed. Taking a breath, she finally picked up her phone. She browsed Weibo and clicked on Su Qian's posts. 80% of them were poisonous advertisements. After laughing for a while, Su Qianxi clicked on her Weibo and found that her fans had increased a lot. Originally, there were only a few zombie fans, but now there were tens of thousands of them. Seeing more than 80,000 fans, Su Qianxi clicked on the ones related to her, all of which were comments on her album. The Maldives, playing piano under wisteria, wedding photos, banquet photos, and all kinds of small photos of her life. There were thousands of comments at the bottom. A straightforward girl, Su Qianxi. Mr. Li, don't cry. Stand up and masturbate. Trust President Li. Tang and President Li have been childhood sweethearts for so many years. Any man with a little bit of interest would have already slept with her. Why wait until after marriage to cheat on her? Unparalleled Q18. Su Qianxi, my goddess is so beautiful. I'm a fan now. She's perfect. One night, 8 times. Unparalleled Q18. Of course, my goddess is the most beautiful. She's not even on the same level as Mr. Tang. Because I'm cute, Su Qianxi. Mr. Tang is too shameless. Mr. Li, don't pay attention to her. Just like President Li said, she is delusional. Su Qianxi read one by one, and her heart was full of happiness. Looking through the album, she found a recent photo with him and posted it on Weibo. Su Qianxi, I believe you. Good night. Within 10 seconds, A is Su Qianxi. Good. Love money, love modesty, love thousand Su Ci. What the F asterisk CK late at night, single dogs say that they have been stuffed with dog food and are very satisfied with your photo. Su Qianxi chuckled and replied, just get used to it. Love money, love Qian, King and Su Ci. F asterisk CK, I got flipped by the goddess. I'm going to buy a lottery ticket. Excited. There were a lot of comments below, all clamoring for a change. Su Qianxi replied for a while and felt sleepy. She charged her phone and put it on the bedside table. Chapter 315. Jiangzhou was located on the edge of the center of Kingstown. When Li Xiqing drove to the villa in Jiangzhou, it was already past 12 o'clock. Sitting in the living room of the villa, Cheng Yu looked at Rong Rui, who was tied up like a fried dough twist on the ground, and yawned. Hearing the doorbell, a housekeeper immediately went to open the door. When Li Xiqing walked in, Rong Rui, who was lying on the ground, sneered. Coward, you're finally here. Li Xiqing ignored him and looked at Cheng Yu. Where's my mom? Annie was frightened just now. I asked her to rest in a room for a while first. Which room? Cheng Yu led him to the room where Qin Shuhua was. Qin Shuhua seemed to be shocked, put away her phone, and said, Why didn't you knock on the door when you came in? You scared me. Li Xiqing glanced at the phone in her hand and asked, Who are you talking to? Your father. Qin Shuhua's eyes were a bit evasive as she replied, I was scared to death. You actually caught the young master of the Rong family. I have to tell your father. You don't have to say it. I have an idea. This guy killed your grandson and almost caused your daughter-in-law to be raped. Everything that Tang Minjing did before must have something to do with him. Qin Shuhua was a bit surprised, covered her mouth, and exclaimed, No way, is it really him? Yes. Li Xiqing responded quietly and walked up. Are you okay? I'll send you back first. Don't come here in the future. Qin Shuhua shook her head, evading his eyes, and said, I heard that you arranged a lot of people here, so I came to have a look. I didn't expect that guy to lie to me. It doesn't matter whether he lied to you or you let him out yourself. Li Xiqing's voice was a bit cold. Mom, I know you like Tang Minjing, but I believe you have seen the video at the party clearly. This kind of woman, let alone myself, will not be able to pass Grandpa's test. After so many years, you should know what Grandpa is like. I hope you don't get on his bad side. Li Xiqing's voice was cold. Of course, Qin Shuhua knew, but she had her own difficulties. How could she be willing to let Tang, Minjing coerce her and harm her daughter-in-law like this? But Qin Shuhua let out a deep sigh and said, I understand. I will go back by myself. You stay here and deal with this guy. Let me walk you out. It's too late. Li Xiqing followed Qin Shuhua and glanced at her phone. When they walked out of the living room, Rong Rue had already climbed up. His hands were tied, but his legs were free. He stood not far from the sofa, surrounded by a dozen bodyguards. Rong Rue stood in the middle of the crowd, looking at them with a faint smile. Qin Shuhua walked through the center of the living room and went straight to the door. Li Xiqing followed closely. Suddenly, Rong Rue moved and rushed toward Qin Shuhua. Under the fluorescent light in the living room, she clearly saw a silver reflection on the side of his mouth. His pupils shrank as he shouted anxiously, Be careful! Seeing that he was getting closer and closer, Qin Shuhua was so scared that she forgot to move. Suddenly, she felt a weight on her body. Qin Shuhua clearly felt that she was wrapped by a strong body, and then she heard the scream of Cheng Yu. Chapter 316. Seeing the bright red liquid splashing out, Qin Shuhua's face suddenly turned pale. No one expected that Rong Rue would have a weapon at this time. When Qin Shuhua passed by Rong Rue, she did not deliberately avoid him, but she never thought that she would hurt her son. Tears suddenly came out, and Qin Shuhua quickly held her son and shouted, Xiqing. Cheng Yu looked at the dozen bodyguard around her and pinned Rong Rue down. One of the bodyguards took the little thing out of his mouth. Squatting down to take a closer look, Cheng Yu found that it was a switchblade. It was very small, but the knife was very sharp. The blade was about 3 or 4 centimeters long, and the whole knife was covered with blood. Li Xiqing's dark suit was half soaked, and his face suddenly became pale. Noticing Qin Shuhua's excitement, Li Xiqing looked much calmer and said slowly, Mom, I'm fine. Qin Shuhua was even more anxious, sobbing and looking at his wound. You're fine? There's so much blood. Call an ambulance. Call a doctor. Li Xiqing's face became paler and paler, and blood had directly dripped down his sleeve. He gasped in pain, but still said, It's okay. Don't cry. Cheng Yu, take my mother back first. Okay, Cheng Yu responded. Hunter, take me to the hospital. Li Xiqing could not hold it anymore, and his hand, covering the wound, was already wet. Qin Shuhua covered her mouth and sobbed. Looking at Rong Rue, who had been pinned down by the bodyguards, she strode over and slapped him hard in the face. Bastard, you ungrateful son of AB*TCH. She almost listened to Tang Minjing and let him go. However, she did not expect that this guy would be so cruel. If this knife had been cut somewhere else, he might have lost his life. The more she thought about it, the more scared Qin Shuhua was. She lifted her foot and kicked him in the lower abdomen, cursing, Bastard! Rong Rue screamed, but then he laughed very happily. Cheng Yu stared at him and whispered, Pervert! Li Xiqing gave her a deep look, his face still as calm as before. Sloppy, vicious, a hacker, and highly skilled. This was Li Xiqing's impression of him. No matter how ruthless the Li family was, they were still good people and the pillars of the country. Ever since he was a child, Li Xiqing had been taught that if Li Sun did not offend him, he would not offend him. When he first caught Rong Rue, he was in a hurry to find Su Qianxi and had no time to deal with this guy. However, he never expected that Rong Rue would be so sick. Not only did he carry a knife with him, but he even hid a switchblade in his mouth. It was hard for him to imagine that a descendant of a minister or general would do something like this. However, Li Xiqing had no time to think. The wound was bleeding more and more, and his vision was a little dark. Looking at Cheng Yu, he said, Don't tell my wife about what happened today. Mom, you too. Don't tell your family. His voice was getting weaker and weaker. Seeing that, the hunter picked him up and ran to the door. By the time he finished treating the wound, it was already midnight. Li Xiqing fainted because of blood loss, but fortunately his nerves were not damaged. After stitches and a blood transfusion, he was sent to the ICU. In the dream, Li Xiqing and Rong Rue were fighting. Su Qianxi was so scared that she screamed, but she could not stop them. However, a sudden explosion blew the two of them into ashes, leaving not even a speck of dust behind. Chapter 317. What a terrible nightmare. There was no sign at all. It was the first time that she had had such a dream, and she felt more and more uneasy. She picked up the phone and dialed Lee Seaching's number, but the call could not be connected. Her heart felt more and more empty. Why couldn't he get through at this time? She checked the time. It was past 2 a.m. Lee Seaching had always been a light sleeper. If he heard the phone ringing, he would definitely pick it up. Could it be that the phone was turned off, or there was no signal? Su Qianxi was lost in her thoughts. When she dialed the fifth number, the call was connected. Honey, hearing Lee Seaching's voice, Su Qianxi was finally relieved. Her eyes suddenly became red and she asked, "What took you so long?" "I'm in a meeting in the United States. I may have to go on a business trip tomorrow." Su Qianxi was a bit suspicious. In her memory, there did not seem to be any important projects recently. Why was Lee Seaching so busy? "What projects do you have to have a meeting so late?" "It's past 2 a.m. You didn't sleep well today. Go to bed early." "Yes, why are you still up?" "I can't sleep. I had a nightmare." Su Qianxi felt wronged. She bent her legs and rested her chin on her knees. "I dreamed that you had a conflict with Rong Rue, and then something happened." On the other side of the phone, Lee Seaching slightly paused and looked at the hunter next to him. The hunter was bewildered by the stare and blinked his eyes in bewilderment. "Silly, dreams are all opposite, which means I am very good." Hearing that, Su Qianxi was relieved and said, "Okay, then go to bed early. I will not disturb you. When is your flight?" 6 o'clock. Remember to have a good rest on the plane. Okay, good night." "Good night." Hanging up the phone, Lee Seaching's sharp eyes fell on the hunter. "You told her?" "Ooh." That was the hunter's first reaction, but he quickly recovered. "No, she called several times, but I did not dare to answer." In the end, he woke up and answered the phone himself. "Tell Chungyu not to tell her. I don't want her to worry." As he spoke, he lifted the quilt and was about to get out of bed. The hunter was startled and exclaimed, "Boss, the doctor said you'd better not move. The wound is very deep. I need to go to the bathroom." "Oh, let me help you. I'm already married." The hunter was speechless. A married woman can't even be helped to the bathroom by a man? Even keeping one's chastity as jade isn't this kind of law-abiding. However, the hunter was smart enough to call Chungyu after he left the ward. Chungyu sat in the living room and watched him being tied up. This time, he couldn't even move his fingers, let alone his feet. "Got it. She did not call to ask me. Even if she did, I would not tell her." Chungyu yawned, feeling sleepy. "That's it. Goodbye." Leaning on the sofa, she fell asleep. At about 3 o'clock in the morning, the door was opened, and she woke up with a fright. It was the big boss. "Aren't you hospitalized?" He did not look at her, but at Rong Rue, who was sleeping on the ground. "Close the door and beat the dog." Lee Seaching's steps were very steady, and his face was very gloomy. However, because of his slightly pale face, he looked more indifferent and sharp. The hunter hurriedly closed the door, and then he heard an order from Lee Seaching. "Keep him alive. As for the rest, you can do whatever you want." The bodyguards did not know how to speak, but when they heard Lee Seaching's order, their eyes all lit up. Chapter 318. In fact, Rong Rue had already woken up when he heard Lee Seaching's first sentence. At this moment, hearing such a direct and perverted order, he suddenly opened his eyes and shouted, "Lee Seaching, my surname is Rong. Rong Haiwe is my uncle, and my grandfather is Rong Jingsheng. If you do anything to me, my uncle and grandfather will not let you go." Lee Seaching heard that, curled his lips, and said slowly, "Really? I'm just playing with a thief who broke into my family's territory. What does it have to do with them?" Hearing that, Rong Rue panicked. Indeed, Kingstown was the territory of the Li family. After all, Rong Rue was just an outsider. Although the Rong family had a high status in the capital, they were evenly matched with the Li family, and he was the one who offended them first. Was he going to be defeated today? Rong Rue's face turned pale, and he shouted uneasily, Li, do it. These two cold words directly excited these bodyguards who had suppressed their emotions for many years. One by one, they moved their muscles and surrounded Rong Rue with a smile on their faces. Cheng Yu was creeped out and shivered on the side. Go back first and go to work tomorrow afternoon. Have a good rest. Li Xiqing's words were so considerate. Cheng Yu was so moved that she almost cried. She nodded and quickly went out the door. Hunter watched with great interest. He crossed his arms and said, Boss, do you think these bodyguards like men? Rong Rue's current situation was completely like a little white rabbit in a wolf's den. His face was full of fear, looking like a little submissive. TSK, so poor. Li Xiqing looked at him coldly and responded, That's true. The hunter was so shocked that he almost fell. That's true? What? These bodyguards had always liked men? Holy shit, this is way too explosive. The hunter looked at Rong Rue's eyes with even more sympathy. At the same time, there was a strong fear. Fortunately, he didn't completely fail the last time. Otherwise, would the big boss also reward him to this group of hungry and thirsty bodyguards? Rong Rue screamed as he took a solid punch to the face. Then, the ropes on his body were untied. Rong Rue struggled with his hands and feet, trying to escape. However, Rong Rue was not tall. He was only 178 centimeters, which was of medium height. In front of the tall and burly bodyguards, there was no way they could fight back. A bodyguard pushed him to the ground and bent his knees to press his waist. Under Rong Rue's frightened and angry eyes, he slapped him directly in the face. Pa! 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 Then another bodyguard lifted him up, and with a tug, the sound of clothes being torn was heard. Rong Rue was scared and shouted, Li Xiqing, let's talk. Unmoved, Li Xiqing looked at him coldly. Rong Rue's pants were taken off. Sobbing, he shouted desperately, Li Xiqing, I am a young master of the Rong family. You can't do this to me. The screams almost broke through the sky. The hunter could not bear to look at it. Crossing his legs, he said, Boss, are you going too far? This guy is also, do you want to try? The hunter immediately shut up and took a step back. Chapter 319. The hunter covered his face and could not bear to watch anymore. A dozen strong men and a dozen bodyguards. If they all attacked him at once, well, it would be inconvenient. If they took turns, it would be... The hunter sympathized with Rong Rue, but Li Xiqing looked indifferent, as if he did not feel much about what was about to happen. People can't be compared with each other, and men can't be compared with each other either. The gap between him and the big boss was so huge that the hunter felt ashamed of his inferiority. Being lifted up, Rong Rue screamed, Li Xiqing, you will regret it. Don't touch me there, pervert. Let go. As soon as Rong Rue shouted, the bodyguard really let go of him. With a bang, Rong Rue fell face first on the ground. His nose hit the ground, and a strong smell of blood came out. Then, a bodyguard sat on him, and Rong Rue clearly felt that the man's body was reacting to him. Rong Rue twisted crazily and yelled, No, Li Xiqing, you are so heartless. You will get what you deserve. Are you cursing me? Li Xiqing slightly raised an eyebrow and suddenly chuckled. He glanced at Su Qianxi casually and sat on the sofa behind him. The warm yellow light in the living room shone on him, making him look like a god. His facial features were exquisite and his temperament was impeccable. Crossing his legs, he looked at Rong Rue and said slowly, Do you want me to let you go? Yes, of course. No one wanted to be humiliated by a man, especially a dozen at once. If they really did, Rong Rue would not be able to keep his life. Beg me. Li Xiqing's thin lips parted, and he uttered two words. Staring at him, Rong Rue gritted his teeth and did not speak. It depends on whether Mr. Rong is sincere. There was a struggle on Rong Rue's face. Suddenly, the bodyguard sitting on him moved, which scared Rong Rue, and he yelled, I beg you. Li Xiqing raised an eyebrow and looked at him calmly. I beg you, Li Xiqing, let me go. Rong Rue blushed. He looked at Li Xiqing and said, please let me go. I will never mess with you again. I swear in the name of the Rong family. If I break my promise, I will be struck by lightning." There was a trace of satisfaction in Li Siqing's calm and indifferent eyes, but he still curled his lips and said, "It seems that Mr. Rong does not know what beg means." Rong Rui's expression changed, and he gritted his teeth. "Don't go too far." Li Siqing waved his hand, and the bodyguard behind him moved again. "Wait." Rong Rui threw caution to the wind. His lower body was bare. It was definitely not a good thing to be faced by a man like this. "Make him go away first." Li Siqing waved his hand. The bodyguard got up automatically. Rong Rui got up and knelt in front of Li Siqing. He gritted his teeth and said, "Although a man has gold under his knees, he only has one life. Li Siqing, please let me go." "That's not what I want." Rong Rui became angry and rushed up. However, before he reached Li Siqing, he was stopped by several bodyguards. Rong Rui cursed, "Fu *K. Li Siqing, are you messing with me?" Li Siqing slowly took out his cell phone, waved it in front of him, and then dialed Tang Minjing's number. Chapter 320. Rong Rui struggled hard, but the bodyguard behind him were too strong for him to break free. Gritting his teeth, he cursed, "Li Siqing, you're despicable." Tang Minjing's call was quickly connected. Li Siqing put the call on speaker and waved his hand. The bodyguards covered Rong Rui's mouth to prevent him from making a sound. "Hello." Tang Minjing sounded a bit surprised. Looking at the time, it was already 3 a.m. Why was Li Siqing calling her at this hour? "Brother Siqing, is that you?" "It's me." Leaning back on the sofa, Li Siqing looked at Rong Rui, who was struggling harder and harder, and said slowly, "Did my mother tell you?" Tang Minjing's heart skipped a beat. Did he know something? Feeling a bit scared, Tang Minjing asked cautiously, "What did Annie say to you?" "I was injured. I was stabbed when I was beating Rong Rui." Tang Minjing was startled. She really did not know about this. Her first reaction was to ask, "Are you okay? Where are you hurt? Is it serious?" The series of questions were full of concern. However, her focus was only on Li Siqing was stabbed, not Rong Rui was beaten. Rong Rui clearly noticed the difference in treatment and felt uncomfortable. He wanted to warn her not to fall into the trap, but the bodyguard behind him firmly held him down and did not let him move at all. Li Siqing changed his posture, appreciating Rong Rui's state, and replied, "It's quite serious. My artery was hurt." This was the truth, but it was not Li Siqing's style to tell the truth. The hunter knew it well and felt sorry for Tang Minjing and Rong Rui. Although he did not know what Li Siqing wanted to do, it was definitely not a good thing. Tang Minjing did not doubt him at all and asked anxiously, "Then what should we do? Where are you now?" 2097 Villa in Jiangzhou. "Okay, I'll call an ambulance for you right away." "No need. The wound has been treated. You just need to come," Li Siqing said. Tang Minjing was dazed. "Me? Yes, I want to see you." Tang Minjing's heart suddenly raced as she said incredulously, "Brother Siqing, if it's not convenient, of course." Tang Minjing said hurriedly, but immediately realized that she was being too impatient. Shyly, she whispered, "I'll be right there." "Brother Siqing, wait for me." Li Siqing hung up and looked at Rong Rui, who had been quiet. "She is coming. What do you think she will choose?" The bodyguard loosened Rong Rui's mouth, and the latter immediately screamed, "What the hell do you want?" What did he mean by tricking Tang Minjing into coming here? Showing off Tang Minjing's love for him? Or was Li Siqing deliberately showing off his charm, telling him that the woman he liked actually loved him? Thinking of Tang Minjing's joyful words, he felt terrible. She had never been like that to him. Li Siqing curled his lips and said slowly, "You will know in a moment." Looking at Li Siqing's expression, Rong Rui suddenly thought of one word: danger. This man was deeper than Rong Rui had imagined. He had a bad feeling, but no matter how he guessed, he could not figure out what Li Siqing wanted to do. Chapter 321. When Tang Minjing arrived, It was already 4 in the morning. As soon as she entered, she heard Rong Rue screaming. Tang Minjing was shocked and walked in. Rong Rue was surrounded by a dozen bodyguards, half kneeling on the ground. He was not wearing anything. Quickly looking away, Tang Minjing looked at Li Xiqing. Seeing the blood on Li Xiqing's hand, she asked nervously, "Brother Xiqing, are you okay?" Li Xiqing did not answer but said, "Get a glass of water for Miss Tang." The hunter took the order and put a bottle of water in front of Tang Minjing. "This is the only one. Just drink it." Tang Minjing was a bit dissatisfied with the hunter's perfunctory attitude and looked at Li Xiqing, hoping that he would stand up for her. However, Li Xiqing did not seem to see it and said, "He confessed." Hearing that, both Tang Minjing and Rong Rue were dazed. Confessed? What did he confess? Tang Minjing was a bit nervous and looked away. What? What do you mean? Mr. Rong said that the child in your belly is not mine. He changed the DNA himself and hacked the internal records of the genetics department. So the DNA comparison showed that it is related to my father's. Tang Minjing's expression changed and looked at Rong Rue. Rong Rue's expression also changed. He had never thought that Li Xiqing would ask Tang Minjing to come for this purpose. This was what it meant to fabricate right and wrong, turn black and white upside down, and lie. "You." Before Rong Rue finished, his mouth was covered by the bodyguard. No matter how hard he struggled, he could not get rid of it. In fact, the child in your belly belongs to a foreigner, which is clearly shown in the video he hacked. Your next plan is to find a chance to meet my wife and frame her. Nonsense. Tang Minjing's face turned pale, and she suddenly stood up. How could I do such a thing? Brother Xiqing, I love you sincerely. This child is really your child. Besides, Qianxi and I are good friends. Even if we are not on good terms now, I would not do such a thing. Tang Minjing looked aggrieved. Brother Xiqing, we grew up together. Don't you know me? How could I be such a person? She had no idea how much of their conversation that afternoon had been overheard by him. However, judging from Li Xiqing's current attitude, he should not have heard much. Tang Minjing made up her mind and denied. Even if you don't believe me, you should believe me. Annie was the one who accompanied me to do the paternity test. No matter what, you should believe in your mother, right? He hacked all the surveillance and data. There's no proof no matter what you say. Gritting her teeth, Tang Minjing looked at him and said, "Why did you do this to me? I know how you feel about me, but you can't do this to me. Don't you know how much this kind of thing hurts a woman?" Rong Rue struggled less and less as he stared at her. Rong Rue, I have had enough of you. So, what he did has nothing to do with you. Li Xiqing asked in a soft voice. No, but he said he's with you. Nonsense. Tang Minjing denied and hurriedly said, Brother Xiqing, I am not that kind of person. Fine. Li Xiqing looked at her coldly and whispered, I said, if what he said is true, let him go. If he lied to me, I will reward him to my men and let them enjoy him to their heart's content. In the end, he added, they all like men, and they are very interested in Rong Rue. Tang Minjing's pupils contracted as she looked at the burly bodyguards behind Rong Rue, shocked. With a complicated look, Rong Rue looked at Tang Minjing and begged for help. Minjing, I don't want to die. Help me. I will ask you one last time. Is what he said true or false? In other words, Tang Minjing could decide Rong Rue's fate. If it was true, he would live. Chapter 322. If it was true, he would live. If it was false, he would rather die. Tang Minjing pinched her arm, looking at Rong Rue, who was begging for help. She suddenly panicked. As if to cooperate with Li Xiqing, one of the bodyguards had moved behind Rong Rue and put his hand on Rong Rue's lower body. Rong Rue shivered and begged Tang Minjing, Minjing, I have done so much for you. I don't ask you to repay me, but you can't just watch me die. If he really fell into the hands of these people, Rong Rue was afraid. Everyone knew what the result would be. Tang Minjing was not a fool. On the contrary, she was very smart. However, because of her cleverness, Tang Minjing knew very well what would happen to her if she confessed at this time. Clearly seeing the struggle on her face, Rong Rue was delighted. He knew it. He knew it. She would not just watch him die, would she? She would not leave him to die, would she? Rong Rue. Tang Minjing's voice was dry and hoarse, looking indifferent. Rong Rue's excitement seemed to have been poured with a bucket of cold water, freezing his heart. No way, no way. However, what Tang Minjing said next made him collapse. She said, "How can I confess to something I did not do?" His strength seemed to be drained, and he could not get up again. The hunter looked at Rong Rue sympathetically and asked, "Boss, what should we do?" Li Xiqing gave Tang Minjing a deep look and said slowly, "He is yours." The bodyguards were excited, looking at Rong Rue with unspeakable passion and excitement. They rubbed their hands and surrounded Rong Rue, and Rong Rue was no longer struggling like before. His eyes were blank, staring at Tang Minjing. His heart was dead. There is nothing sadder than a dead heart, and the death of a person, letting his body be manipulated. Rong Rue no longer showed any signs of struggling. Tang Minjing did not dare to look at his eyes. She turned her head and looked away. She knew that he was good to her, but she could not. If she admitted it now, it would be a slap in the face. At that time, she would be finished. The Tang family would be finished. Everything would be finished. She couldn't ruin the entire Tang family for her own selfishness. For now, he could only borrow Su Qianxi's hand. Tang Minjing's eyes reddened as she heard the rustling sound not far away. Her heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. However, he did not utter a single word. "Let's go inside." His voice was deep and meaningful. "Don't do it in the living room. There are women there." The bodyguards took the order and dragged Rong Rue into the room. Tang Minjing squeezed her hands and looked at the room. Seeing Rong Rue's desperate eyes, he almost went crazy. His eyes were scarlet, and he roared, "Tang Minjing, ah? Ah!" The door to the room wasn't closed tightly. It was just left ajar. After a while, a suppressed roar came from inside the room. There was also the sound of their bodies colliding. Every sound was stimulating her nerves. Rong Rue, bang. The door was closed, blocking all the sound inside. Tang Minjing fell onto the sofa, her face pale. Chapter 323. She was the one who pushed him into the abyss. "This is the house I prepared for you. Do you like it?" Li Xiqing suddenly said with a meaningful tone. Tang Minjing was a bit absent-minded. Hearing his words, she looked at Li Xiqing. However, she was caught off guard and met his deep eyes. He said, "Take this house as a meeting gift from me to my child. From today onwards, you can live here." Child? A gift to the child? So he had accepted it? Tang Minjing looked at him in a daze. "You can have all the bodyguards in the house. They will be responsible for your safety." Putting one hand in his pocket, Li Xiqing gazed at her. Under the light in the living room, Li Xiqing seemed to have a lazy glow, making him look like he had walked out of a painting she had secretly drawn, so dazzling and charming. Tang Minjing's heart skipped a beat, looking at Li Xiqing. He was looking at her. He was really looking at her. She had waited for a long time. Tang Minjing's eyes suddenly became red. Looking at him, she called, "Brother Xiqing." After so many years, Tang Minjing had thought that what she wanted was just a dream. She thought that he was just a dream for her. But this house was a gift for her child. He believed it. He really thought that this was their child. The hunter felt his heart ache as he listened to the story. Was Li Xiqing serious? Although this house was not in the center of the city, it was still very large and would cost at least tens of millions. Was he really going to give it away like this? The hunter was a bit shocked. Seeing Tang Minjing's reaction, he immediately thought of a honey trap. However, what did Li Xiqing want? "Get some rest. It's almost dawn," Li Xiqing said thoughtfully. "Later, a nanny will come over and take care of you from now on." It was the first time that Tang Minjing had seen Li Xiqing so gentle. Bodyguards and housekeepers were all arranged for her, and by Li Xiqing himself. This was something that Tang Minjing could not even imagine in the past. All of a sudden, she felt warm and asked, "Brother Xiqing, Why are you so nice to me all of a sudden?" Hearing that, Li Xiqing's eyes darkened as he glanced at her slightly bulging belly. Tang Minjing finally understood that he probably really regarded the child as his own flesh and blood. Secretly delighted, Tang Minjing became more and more excited. In this way, when Su Qianxi framed her to have an abortion, his reaction must be very interesting. At that time, it would be killing two birds with one stone. On the one hand, she could clear her name and the Tang family's name. On the other hand, Su Qianxi could no longer stand by his side. With the help of Qin Shuhua, she could replace Su Qianxi and become the new mistress of the Li family. Tang Minjing was very excited. She seemed to be getting closer and closer to her goal. Bang! A muffled sound suddenly came from Rong Rui's room. Tang Minjing was startled and came back to her senses. The door to the room was opened, and a bodyguard walked out. There was a trace of panic on his face. He did not know how to speak, so he could only gesture with his hands. Chapter 324. Suicide. Hearing these two words, Tang Minjing's heart suddenly trembled. Seeing the bodyguard nodding, Li Xiqing looked at Tang Minjing. She covered her mouth and turned pale with fright. There was shock and fear, but there was no reluctance or sadness. Li Xiqing seemed to have seen through her feelings for Rong Rui and couldn't help feeling sorry for him. Waving his hand, Li Xiqing said quietly, "Take him to the hospital." It had been 3 days. Rong Rui had been trapped here for 3 days. His hands were handcuffed to the bed. Only when he was physically required would he be taken to the bathroom by 2 strong bodyguards. For the rest of the time, he was trapped in bed, without freedom or direction. Rong Rui looked at the ceiling, his eyes empty. Instead of being sent to the hospital, he was sent to another villa under Li Xiqing's name. Just at the door, there were 2 bodyguards and 2 nannies guarding his bed. He had to say that Li Xiqing was really considerate and cunning. Rong Rui never knew that a person could be so despicable. He set him up, set Tang Minjing up, and treated him like a fool from the beginning to the end. After being dragged into the room by the bodyguards, Rong Rui almost thought that he would be killed by them. However, they took him to a screen and let him see Tang Minjing's expression clearly. Tang Minjing's fear, joy, calculation, surprise, and the look on her face after hearing that he had committed suicide. All these scenes made him disheartened. He thought that she would see him. He thought that no matter how heartless she was, she would not leave him alone. However, reality was like a fiery slap, ruthlessly slapping his face. Ha! Ha ha ha! Rong Rui smiled and looked at the ceiling, but there were tears in his eyes, like a wounded clown, sad and ridiculous. "Hey, what are you doing?" A teasing voice came in, and Rong Rui looked at the door. It was Li Xiqing's assistant, the woman who had fought with him twice. She looked at him, her eyes smiling into a beautiful crescent. "Why don't we talk?" Rong Rui was sent to the hospital, and Li Xiqing followed him. Tang Minjing fell asleep in the room Li Xiqing arranged for her. When she woke up, it was already noon. She stretched her back comfortably, and before she could say anything, a maid came up to greet her respectfully. Her attitude was humble, and she bent her knees respectfully. This was simply the same treatment as imperial concubines in ancient times. Tang Minjing was very satisfied. She squinted and enjoyed the maid's service. During the whole process, Tang Minjing did not say a word to the maid. After washing up, Tang Minjing went out for breakfast and walked elegantly to the garden. She found that the backyard and the front yard were surrounded by 2-meter-high walls with beautiful murals. The 2 maids quietly followed Tang Minjing and walked around the entire villa. In the afternoon, Tang Minjing went back to her room with satisfaction. Pushing open the window, he wanted to take a look at the scenery outside. To his surprise, he saw the backyard garden outside the window. Looking further ahead, he saw a thick wall. The exquisite murals painted in the style of ancient Roman mythology depicted a touching legend. It was already autumn, but the flowers and grass were still flowers and grass. The wind was blowing, the grass was swaying, and the flowers were shaking. Chapter 325. Leaving the window open, Tang Minjing went to the bed and sat down. She took out her phone and sent the photo she had just taken to Su Qianxi. The first class in the afternoon had just begun. Not long after the professor arrived, Su Qianxi's phone rang. Feeling embarrassed, Su Qianxi quickly turned her phone on silent mode. With a series of vibrations, pictures appeared on the notification bar. The sender was Tang Minjing. Su Qianxi did not even want to open it. When she was about to put the phone in her bag and focus on the class, a few words suddenly popped up on the notification bar. "Look, Brother Xiqing gave it to me." Su Qianxi narrowed her eyes and clicked on WeChat. The message was, "Look, the villa Brother Xiqing gave me. It's so big and comfortable." She looked at the more than 20 pictures one by one. This was the villa in Jiangzhou, where Grandpa died in her previous lifetime. It was indeed under Li Xiqing's name. After she divorced him, he gave her the villa as part of the alimony payment. However, why would Li Xiqing give it to her? Just when Su Qianxi was lost in thought, her phone vibrated again. "Tang Minjing, I have to talk to you now. Brother Xiqing is here to see me." Seeing this sentence, Su Qianxi frowned. Li Xiqing went to see her? At this time? Wasn't he on a business trip? Su Qianxi smiled. About a minute or two later, Tang Minjing replied, but there was no text, just a selfie. In the photo, Tang Minjing looked a bit weak because of her pregnancy, but she had a bright smile on her face. Just behind Tang Minjing, a familiar tall figure was in the photo. His face was cold and indifferent, looking down at the documents in front of him, just like how Li Xiqing usually dealt with business. The angle of the photo was his side profile, which meant that Tang Minjing hid behind him and took the photo. Looking at the display and the background, everything was still Li Xiqing style, just like when she first moved in her previous lifetime. Su Qianxi withdrew her hand and looked at the man in the photo incredulously. This was Li Xiqing. Wasn't he on a business trip? At this time, shouldn't he still be on the plane? Why was he in Jiangzhou? Why was he in the villa? And with Tang Minjing? After class, she couldn't wait to call Li Xiqing. The phone was turned off. She called Chengyu, and Chengyu quickly answered, "Hi, madam." Su Qianxi was silent for a moment and said, "Assistant Cheng, let me ask you something. Answer me honestly." This kind of opening usually didn't mean anything good. She perked up. "Okay, where's Mr. Li now?" Chengyu had an ominous feeling in her heart. Why did she feel that Lady Boss had already seen through everything? However, after thinking about it, she still said the line she had prepared. "Boss went to the United States for a meeting. I think it will be a while before he comes back. You should be on the plane right now." "Really?" Chengyu was even more nervous, but as a qualified and ethical assistant, her tone was calm and natural. "Really? Oh, thank you." Chapter 326. Hanging up the phone, she could no longer sit still. There was only one thought in her mind. He lied to her. He lied to her. Quickly walking out of the school, she felt a bit uneasy and took a taxi to Jiangzhou's house. "Mom, I know. Now, Brother Xiqing is here with me. I will take care." Tang Minjing's voice was full of sweetness. Her big eyes seemed to be fixed on Li Xiqing, not moving away at all. Sitting on the sofa, Li Xiqing had a contract in front of him. Hearing her charming voice, there was a trace of imperceptible disgust in his eyes. Tang Minjing did not notice it at all. It seemed that Mrs. Tang had said something embarrassing on the other side of the phone. With a shy face, Tang Minjing said, "Oh, Mom, what are you talking about? I don't want to talk to you anymore. That's it. I'm hanging up." Her cheeks were red, and her face was full of love. At this moment, Tang Minjing was indescribably seductive, mature, and overflowing with the brilliance of motherhood. However, Li Xiqing was not moved and said, "I have talked to your parents. From today on, you will live here. They will be responsible for your safety." Li Xiqing pointed at a row of bodyguards standing not far away. There were not many, just 20. Then he looked at another row of women, ranging in age from teenagers to 30s, all young and respectful. "They will take care of your daily life." The number of maids and nannies was the same, 20. Tang Minjing was both touched and surprised. Blushing, she said, "Brother Xiqing, Are you serious? Our child is not even born yet, and you have already spent so much on him. When he is born, you will spoil him. Li Xiqing's eyes lit up. Our child. Li Xiqing felt disgusted for no reason. Resisting the urge to leave immediately, he gazed at her with a pair of dark eyes. The complexity at the bottom of his eyes made it difficult to see what exactly he was feeling. Tang Minjing felt even more excited. Looking away, she asked nervously, What's wrong? Was it because she was particularly beautiful today? It was said that people were in high spirits when they were happy, and it was true. Tang Minjing touched her face and couldn't help curling her lips. It won't be for nothing. Li Xiqing's voice was cold and deep. We can get it back soon. Hearing that, Tang Minjing nodded and whispered, If the child is like you, he will be very successful. These things are nothing. He'll earn them back sooner or later. Li Xiqing glanced at her, but did not explain. He stood up and said, I should go to the hospital to change my dressing. You rest well and take care of yourself. Tang Minjing reluctantly reached out and grabbed his sleeve. Will you come tonight? Li Xiqing glanced at the hand, and Tang Minjing felt her hand was scalded and quickly let it go. When I'm done, he said coldly and turned to leave. Tang Minjing was a bit disappointed, but thinking of everything he had left for her, she couldn't help feeling sweet. Just wait and see. The position of Mrs. Li would be hers sooner or later. The taxi stopped near the villa. When she was about to get out, the black European-style door of the villa opened. A black Maybach slowly drove out, and Su Qianxi clearly saw the man sitting in the passenger seat. His temperament was cold, and his expression indifferent. She was so familiar with him. Chapter 3:27. Su Qianxi's heart felt like it had been pierced by a hedgehog. It was so painful that it felt like it was about to be torn apart. Her eyes were hot, and tears rolled down her cheeks. He lied to her. He lied to her. He was really here with Tang Minjing. But why wasn't he on a business trip? Didn't he go to America? Even Cheng Yu was lying to her. Taking out her phone, she clicked on the number on the top of the contact list and dialed it. This time, the phone was not turned off. Su Qianxi glanced at the time. It was past 5 p.m. With a hint of sarcasm in her eyes, she suddenly chuckled. So dedicated. At this time, the plane had already arrived in New York. Turning on the phone at this time was indeed perfect. The call was quickly connected. Before he spoke, Su Qianxi said, Honey. He did not expect that she would be so passionate today. Hearing this word, all the gloominess was gone. Frowning, he said quietly, Honey. These two words were said casually, but they were filled with his deep feelings and tenderness. However, in Su Qianxi's ears, it was like the ultimate punishment, trampling all her dignity on the ground. You're on a business trip today? Yeah. He paused, seeming to be thinking. After about a second, he said, Just got off the plane. Liar. Su Qianxi's heart skipped a beat, and she burst into tears. She immediately covered her mouth, fearing that she would cry out loud. What's wrong? He asked softly, his voice extremely gentle, with the most considerate intimacy. Is class over? Seeing her like this, the taxi driver considerately took a tissue for her and handed it to her. She wiped her tears with the tissue, took a deep breath, and tried to make her voice sound calm. She asked, I just saw someone who looked like you. I thought it was you, but it turned out that I was wrong. Li Xiqing's voice sounded nice. He teased, Did you miss me? She frowned and blushed. After a few seconds of silence, she slowly replied, No, not at all. Don't be sarcastic. I won't laugh at you. He leaned back in his chair and said in a low voice, I miss you too. Liar. Su Qianxi blinked, and hot tears rolled down her cheeks again. Her voice was choked with sobs. Mr. Li, I'm so tired. So tired. So tired, she felt that she could not love him anymore. He didn't want her. He didn't like her. She knew it. She knew it all. But why did he lie to her? Since he loved Tang Minjing, why did he have to torture her in such a cruel way? What's wrong? Li Xiqing frowned and asked with concern. Are you under a lot of pressure? I miss you. He finally relaxed his frown and whispered, I'll be back soon. Good girl. Su Qianxi covered her mouth with one hand and hung up the phone. Finally, she could not help but burst into tears. When the phone was hung up, Li Xiqing's heart felt warm as if it was burning. This woman, Li Xiqing, couldn't help curling his lips. However, the hunter exclaimed, "Boss, your hand is bleeding again." Li Xiqing glanced at it and did not notice when it was bleeding. At the same time, he felt relieved. Fortunately, he was on a business trip. Otherwise, she would be worried if she saw it. "Go to the hospital." The hunter took the order and drove in the direction of the first military hospital. Chapter 328. 2 days was not a long time. However, for Tang Minjing, it was extremely difficult. "Maid, I want to eat sour plums." "Laurel, I want noodles." "What's wrong with you? You can't even do such a small thing. Brother Xiqing must have fed you for nothing." "Hey, why are you looking at me like that? Do you know who I am?" Tang Minjing ordered the maids and nannies around, satisfying her desire to be the hostess. However, at the same time, she felt empty and disappointed. After ordering the maids around, Tang Minjing went to sleep. When she woke up, she was so bored that she wanted to spit bubbles. Suddenly, Tang Minjing remembered the most important thing she had not done yet. She was going to Li Xiqing's company, and she was going to ask Su Qianxi to lend her a hand. Although he had told her not to go out easily and to stay at home, wouldn't it be more meaningful if she could send the child away without his expectation? Without hesitation, Tang Minjing picked out a loose dress from the closet that showed off her belly and put on delicate makeup. The woman in the mirror was exquisite and mature. Her beauty was beyond comparison. Tang Minjing put on her bag with satisfaction and walked out. Seeing Tang Minjing so energetic, the two maids who were guarding the door looked at each other and immediately followed her. "You don't have to follow me. I will go out for a walk." Tang Minjing became impatient when she saw them. They were all mute, and only Laurel could speak. How boring. Laurel, the maid's supervisor, quickly came over and shouted, "Miss Tang, what are you doing? Do I need to tell you?" Tang Minjing said grumpily, "Mr. Li said that you should take a good rest. If you're not well during pregnancy, it will be hard for you to give birth." The last sentence was added by Laurel herself. However, Tang Minjing was overjoyed. "Okay, I see, but I have to go out for a while. I will be back soon." "No, Miss Tang, you can't go out." Perhaps they heard Moon Laurel's movements. The two bodyguards standing at the door became even colder. They stood at the door and blocked it. "What do you mean? I can't go out?" "Miss Tang, you can stay at home. This is what Sir wants." Tang Minjing was furious. "How dare you? Why can't I go out? It seems that I can't control you." Then she dialed Li Xiqing's number. However, although the cell phone signal bar was full, the call couldn't be made. Tang Minjing was shocked. She tried to open the data connection and switched to 3G, 4G, but found that she could not even send WeChat messages. Tang Minjing's face changed. She immediately thought of the beautiful murals around the villa and the 2-meter-high wall. The bodyguards heard the commotion and surrounded them. The maids were respectful, but not fearful at all. Laurel looked at her with a warning gaze. Tang Minjing's heart skipped a beat, and a crazy idea filled her mind. She was under house arrest. 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. Su Qianxi did not know how she got through the week. Standing by the floor-to-ceiling window on the 16th floor, she watched the cars and people coming and going. As time passed, she did not even know how long she had been standing. Her legs were numb, but she had no intention of sitting down. The phone rang, and she was pulled back to reality. Glancing at the screen, she saw it was Qin Shuhua. Chapter 329. She met Qin Shuhua at her favorite French restaurant. In her previous life, she had studied table etiquette in order to please Qin Shuhua. She had crammed the knowledge in this area so that she wouldn't be embarrassed when she invited Qin Shuhua to dinner. However, later, she found out. It was not that she was not good enough, but Tang Minjing was too good. She could not compete with her. Qin Shuhua booked a VIP room. When she was taken in by the waiter, Su Qianxi immediately saw her elegant mother-in-law sitting inside. Seeing her come in, Qin Shuhua waved her hand and said, You can serve the food. Mom. Su Qianxi sat down and let the waiter prepare the food for her. Qin Shuhua nodded and took a sip of water. She seemed to clear her throat and said, "These days, you did not stay at home?" "Yes." "Why?" Su Qianxi pursed her lips and looked at Qin Shuhua. Qin Shuhua looked happier than usual. Faintly, Su Qianxi saw the calculation in Qin Shuhua's eyes. Her heart sank. Su Qianxi curled her lips and said, "Mom, you wanted to see me today. Did you need something?" The waiter had already served the food. The first dish was of French mussels. "I already know." Qin Shuhua looked at her with a faint smile. "You still want to hide it from me?" "What?" Su Qianxi did not understand. "The contract." Su Qianxi's pupils shrank. Hearing this word, she inexplicably panicked. "Contract? What contract?" Pretending to be calm, Su Qianxi looked at Qin Shuhua with some doubt in her eyes. "Contract?" The waiter quickly brought a St. Jacques scallop. The exquisite meal was like a beautiful work of art. Then there was fried fish, crispy onion soup. Su Qianxi suddenly chuckled with sarcasm. This was Tang Minjing's taste. Qin Shuhua seemed to also notice that Su Qianxi had noticed. She coughed and said, "I am a little hungry, so I ordered first. If you do not like these, you can order something else." "Okay." Qin Shuhua dismissed the waiter and said, "Let's eat first. We will talk after eating." However, there was a stone in her heart that Su Qianxi could not eat. Moreover, none of these were what she liked to eat. After taking a few bites, she couldn't eat anymore and went straight to the point. "Mom, why did you call me today? Are you full?" Qin Shuhua glanced at the almost untouched dishes in front of her. What a waste. What if? Su Qianxi was also angry and sneered, "Mom, all these are Tang Minjing's favorites. I don't like to eat this kind of food at all. If you don't want to waste it, shouldn't you ask her out?" Qin Shuhua did not expect Su Qianxi to talk back and looked at her in surprise. Su Qianxi glanced at the time on her phone and said, "Why don't we call her now and ask her to come here? Maybe she can catch up with the heat." "What do you mean? Mom, what do you mean?" Qin Shuhua was furious. She opened her purse, took out the contract she had hidden, and threw it at Su Qianxi. Su Qianxi's heart skipped a beat, and her arrogance disappeared in an instant. Looking down at the 4 words, her mind went blank. Divorce contract? How did it fall into Qin Shuhua's hands? Chapter 330. How do you explain this? Qin Shuhua sounded a bit angry. Divorce contract? I didn't know you were so scheming and capable. I really don't know how Captain Li fell for you. For the title of Mrs. Li, you and your mother have set up such a big trap. Su Qianxi's heart raced. However, looking at the furious Qin Shuhua, he calmed down. He looked at her coldly and asked, "Where did you get this thing?" "Divorce contract. 1 year." Now it had been almost 7 months, and there was less than half a year left. On it was her signature, Li Xiqing's signature, and the lawyer's seal. "You don't need to know where I got it." Qin Shuhua seemed a little agitated. She stood up and said, "You had such an agreement with my son from the very beginning. Then, who is the father of the child you miscarried?" Su Qianxi seemed to have returned to her previous lifetime, when she was despised by everyone. Qin Shuhua's expression still did not change at all. However, Su Qianxi was no longer that Su Qianxi. With a cold face, Su Qianxi also stood up and said slowly, "Mom, I call you Mom because I really treat you as my mother." Qin Shuhua looked at Su Qianxi incredulously, not expecting her mother to talk to her like this. "But are you sure that what you're doing now, is behaving like a mother? If my child is not Li Xiqing's, do you think your son will let me go? Do you think Mr. Li can tolerate me putting on such a big green hat for him?" Qin Shuhua paused. Indeed, no one knew Li Xiqing better than she did. Li Xiqing's personality was extremely domineering, and he could not tolerate even a grain of sand. "I know that you have never liked me and have never treated me as your daughter-in-law. I know that. But why are you trying so hard to bring Li Xiqing and Tang Minjing together?" Su Qianxi really could not figure it out. "Last time at the party, you clearly saw that the death of the child had something to do with Tang Minjing. If it were not for her, My child would be almost 7 months old now. Maybe before the new year, the child would be born. In less than 2 years, he might be able to call you grandma and call me mom. Qin Shuhua was a bit moved. Looking at Su Qianxi's hateful face, she was a bit dumbfounded. She thought that Su Qianxi had no temper. It turned out that the little woman who only knew to stand behind Li Xiqing or Li Sun could have such a powerful side. But Mom, Su Qianxi looked pained. The child is dead, killed by Tang Minjing. You did not question her or scold her. Why are you doing this to me now? Mom, this is too unfair. Qin Shuhua looked at her and coldly laughed. I'll believe that the child is my son's, but what about yours? How do you explain that? Su Qianxi looked at the divorce contract in front of her, and a white light flashed in her mind. Things that she could not figure out before suddenly became clear. He chuckled softly, and an indescribably complicated expression flowed between his brows as he slowly said, Did he ask you to find me? Him? Li Xiqing? Qin Shuhua looked at her in surprise. Su Qianxi's eyes became more and more wet. He wanted to divorce early so that Tang Minjing and his child could officially become part of the Li family, right? So, this secret that only belonged to them appeared in Qin Shuhua's hands, so that she could force her to divorce, right? Chapter 331. As long as she did not leave, Tang Minjing would be the mistress. She wanted Tang Minjing's child to be born as an illegitimate child. She wanted her to abdicate and let the mother and son take over. No way. Looking at Qin Shuhua's slightly shocked eyes, Su Qianxi picked up her bag and turned to leave. After paying the bill, Su Qianxi took a taxi and went home. Su Qianxi thought she would cry, but after getting in the car, she unexpectedly found that her heart was extremely empty. Her eyes were strangely dry. Leaning against the back seat, Su Qianxi only felt that her mood was depressed to the extreme, as if the next second she could be pulled into a bottomless abyss. Taking a deep breath, she opened the window and saw the bright and luxurious street view going back. The cold wind of October poured in, making Su Qianxi shiver. A place appeared in her mind. Su Qianxi looked away and said, Master, let's go to Kingstown Tower. Kingstown Tower was located in the center of Kingstown. It was surrounded by many famous office buildings and classic coordinates of Kingstown. After buying a ticket, Su Qianxi went directly to the top floor, walked to the transparent area on the edge, and looked down. Her heart was beating like thunder. However, he soon emptied his mind and looked into the distance. Thousands of lights were bright, and the road was illuminated by warm yellow street lights. Cars were coming and going like running water. Looking down, it was the largest river in Kingstown. On the river, beautiful and luxurious ships were slowly moving, leaving countless beautiful and gorgeous sceneries. Spectacular. After so many years in Kingstown, it was the first time that Su Qianxi saw the city like this. She couldn't help but feel lost, and her thoughts went further and further. The phone in her bag vibrated. Su Qianxi looked down and was shocked by the scenery under her feet. Her first reaction was to take a step back, and then she remembered that she was standing on Kingstown Tower. Feeling the eyes around her, Su Qianxi felt a bit embarrassed. Blushing, she walked to a place with fewer people. Picking up the phone, she saw the call was from Louis Han. Hi, Qianxian. Hi. Turn around and look back. Su Qianxi was dazed and subconsciously turned her head. Louis Han held the phone and looked at her with a bright smile. Under the rimless glasses, a pair of peach blossom eyes were filled with tenderness. Why are you here? She exclaimed. Are you following me? Hearing this, Louis Han took a step back and shouted, Go to hell. Who's following you? Shameless. I'm here to accompany a client. She looked behind him. Where are your clients? Yes, I said I had met a good friend, and she said she was going. By yourself? Yes. Tis TSK just in time. Accompany me to eat. I haven't eaten yet. You don't eat with your clients? They didn't eat either, but the couple went to get special treatment and ignored me. Sigh. Single dogs have no human rights. Louis Han was so angry that he almost wanted to scratch the wall. She laughed and looked reluctant. Well, I haven't eaten yet anyway. Let's eat together. Lu Yihan looked at her, his smile deepening, and nodded. Yes, let's go together. After dinner, it was after 9 p.m. Lu Yihan was very good at chatting. In less than 3 hours, Su Qianxi's depressed mood that was about to go crazy was quickly relieved. Lu Yihan started the car and offered to take her home. She did not refuse and directly told him Song Yifan's address. Chatting and laughing along the way, they soon arrived at their destination. Lu Yihan parked the car at the gate of the community and walked Su Qianxi up. However, just as she reached the bottom of the stairs, a figure forcefully bumped into her eyes. Chapter 332. Li Xiqing stood in the light of dusk, wearing a dark gray trench coat. His tall figure cast a long shadow on Su Qianxi. Seeing Su Qianxi walking with Lu Yihan, Li Xiqing's cold and deep eyes became even colder, like a cold pond in winter, bottomless. Seeing him, Lu Yihan couldn't help but think of the last time he did not come. Although he was not happy, he was Qianqian's husband, so Lu Yihan could only swallow his unhappiness. Originally, he wanted to go upstairs to have some tea and see what kind of person Qianqian's father was. However, at this moment, seeing Li Xiqing's obviously unfriendly face, Lu Yihan knew that this was not a good place to stay. He laughed and said, "Qianqian, I'll go first." "Well, thank you for today, Yihan." "You're welcome. Bye." Lu Yihan walked down the stairs, shaking his car key and walking toward his red Renault. Li Xiqing did not say a word from the beginning to the end. He slowly took out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, took one out, and lit it with a lighter. Slowly, he took a puff. As if she did not see him, Su Qianxi took out her card, swiped the access code, and walked in. Li Xiqing followed her, but Su Qianxi walked extremely fast, as if she was avoiding something. After entering the elevator, she directly pressed the close button. A big hand blocked between them, and Li Xiqing squeezed his body in. His cold face seemed to be tighter, and a pair of cold eyes stared at her like a cold eagle, sharp and deep. Su Qianxi did not look at him and pressed the 16th floor, as if she did not see him. Li Xiqing took a step closer, and Su Qianxi was scared and stepped back, hitting the wall of the elevator. With a big hand next to her, Li Xiqing held a cigarette between his long fingers. The smoke slowly rose, and soon, the entire elevator was filled with the smell of smoke. Li Xiqing narrowed his eyes, and Su Qianxi only felt a sense of danger. "Avoiding me?" Li Xiqing stared at her, his voice low. Su Qianxi's breathing suddenly quickened, but she still turned her head and did not look at him. Ding! When the elevator arrived, she was about to walk around him, but her hand was grabbed. He was so strong that Su Qianxi's arm was caught off guard and hurt. "Let me go." Su Qianxi's voice was a bit choked. When she said it, even she was shocked. Looking back, she saw a pair of eyes. She felt that she was about to be drowned. So deep, struggling hard, she got rid of him and ran to the door of her house. However, the more anxious he was, the more he couldn't find the bunch of keys. Her heart was beating faster and faster. She clearly sensed that he was already behind her, but she had not found the key yet. The faint white smoke blew past her ear, carrying the smell of tobacco, tickling her face. Su Qianxi's heart skipped a beat. Inexplicably, she no longer had the strength to squat down. Her vision blurred. Gritting her teeth, Su Qianxi poured out everything in the small bag. Her cell phone, key card, cosmetics, wallet, and finally, a bunch of keys fell out with a jingle. Chapter 333. Picking up the things one by one, she put them back in her bag and stood up. Su Qianxi looked up at the man behind her who was almost leaning against her. The familiar smell, the strong male hormones, and the face that she knew so well, Li Xiqing stretched out his hand and pressed her against the wall. His deep and cold eyes were even more intense, as if he was going to suck her in. She looked up at him and felt a lump in her throat. "Guilty." Li Xiqing's voice was deep and mellow like the sound of a cello. She bit her lower lip, turned her head, and reached out to push him away. However, Li Xiqing did not move at all. He looked at her with a deeper gaze. Pressing her down, he did not let her escape and said slowly, "What are you afraid of? Tell me." Su Qianxi did not speak. Tears ran down her cheeks and wet her face. Li Xiqing's eyes softened a bit. Holding her hand, he took her key and said, "Go in. It's cold outside. Don't go in." She sobbed but was firm. "If you have anything to say, say it here. I will go in and help you move your things. I will take you home. This is my home, Mr. Li. You go back. I will not go back with you." Li Xiqing narrowed his eyes and looked dangerous, but he still said patiently, "Don't be naughty. It is not good to disturb father-in-law song. Dad went to London. Then I will stay here with you today." Su Qianxi resisted and pushed him, shaking her head hard. "No." Li Xiqing put an arm around her waist, looked at her, and asked, "What's wrong with you? Are you afraid that I will scold you, or that I will hurt Louis Han?" Shaking her head again and again, Su Qianxi was choked and could not speak. "I do not object to you making friends. Just keep your distance." Li Xiqing was already very close to her. "Louis Han is your good friend. I was too impulsive last time. I found out later, and I'm also very grateful to him. When there is a chance, can you take me to him to apologize and thank him in person?" Although he still did not like to see them together. However, he was the one who saved Su Qianxi. Apologizing and thanking him was something he should do. Putting his face close to hers, Li Xiqing's eyes were full of tenderness. He whispered, "You know, I miss you so much." The faint smell of tobacco filled the tip of her nose. Hearing this, Su Qianxi's heart was even more painful, trembling and cramping. He said he missed her. He said he missed her. However, he had been on a business trip with Tang Minjing for a whole week. Now that he had returned from his business trip, he came to miss her, or Tang Minjing's health was not good for him to travel. So he came to miss her. She couldn't help but burst into tears. Pushing him away, her hand reached out and landed on his face. "Pa!" Dazed, Li Xiqing looked at her. When she was about to slap him for the second time, Li Xiqing's eyes darkened. He grabbed her hand and growled, "Are you crazy?" Li Xiqing had never been treated like this before. Ever since he was young, his life had been smooth sailing. He had only been beaten by this woman when he was 26 years old, and she had even beaten him twice. Su Qianxi's body trembled, and her back was against the wall. Looking at him, she burst into tears. "Why? Why did you do this to me?" Li Xiqing felt even more puzzled. Looking at her, he said angrily, "Su Qianxi." He was the one who was slapped, and he had not cried yet. Why was she crying? However, he saw Su Qianxi's hand was going to take off her coat. She was only wearing a tank top. Taking it off, her white and delicate skin was exposed, which deeply stimulated Li Xiqing's vision. Then, she lifted the tank top. Startled, Li Xiqing went up and pressed her hand down, growling, "Are you crazy? This is still the door." Chapter 334. Li Xiqing suddenly tightened his grip on her hand. Gazing at her with a pair of cold eyes, he said in a cold voice, "What do you mean?" Su Qianxi's hand was pried open, and her chin was pinched by him. Looking up, she saw his cold eyes. It was as if a violent storm was about to engulf her. Su Qianxi's heart trembled. Looking at him, she reached out and continued to lift her shirt. He pulled her hand up and pressed her down. Gritting his teeth, he looked at her and almost roared, "What do you mean by this?" Did she think that he came here just to have sex with her? Su Qianxi's back was pressed against the cold wall, her body shivering. In the face of the storm that almost tore her apart, she forced a sneer and endured the heartache. With a look of disdain, she said word by word, "What are you pretending for? The people outside can't satisfy you. So you came to me, didn't you?" The people outside? Li Xiqing's heart felt like it had been bitten by a mad dog, and a piece of it was gone in an instant. Dripping with blood, it was riddled with holes. The hand pinching her chin tightened, and his fist hit the wall behind her ear. Bang! With a muffled sound, Su Qianxi was scared. Her legs became weak, and she almost fell. However, the breath hanging in her heart did not allow her to fall. Biting her lower lip, she looked at him stubbornly, her body shivering slightly. Li Xiqing looked at her, sneered, and bent down to pick up the coat that Su Qianxi had just thrown away. Su Qianxi's eyelashes trembled, and her tears fell on his head, sinking into his hair. Li Xiqing paused and quickly picked up the coat. Seeing her trembling in fear, as if she was a hedgehog facing a formidable enemy, his heart skipped a beat. Throwing the coat at her face, Li Xiqing said in a low voice with suppressed anger, "I really want to strangle you." His voice was so vicious that Su Qianxi was scared and shrank back. Seeing this, Li Xiqing suddenly chuckled. "I must be crazy to let you do this to me." His deep and mellow voice echoed in the corridor. The sound of leather shoes faded away, and Su Qianxi could only see darkness. It was only when he heard the elevator ring that he pulled his jacket off his face. He stared at the empty corridor in a daze. After a long while, she picked up the key and walked in. She threw herself on the bed and stared at the ceiling, her mind blank. My head hurts so much. Not knowing how long she had been lying there, she took her phone out of her bag, found Li Xiqing's number, and sent several text messages. "Mr. Li, I know everything about your business trip. Mr. Li, your mother looked for me today. She used our contract to force me to divorce you. I refused and told her a lot. I never knew I could be so eloquent. Mr. Li, I will not divorce you. There is still more than 5 months left in the divorce contract. I will release you after your sentence is completed." Li Xiqing, "I love you." She felt like she had seen a ghost. Why? Li Xiqing, who is usually calm and composed, was seriously injured and went to the bar. Not only did he drink, but he also fought. Chapter 335. She wanted to cry, but had no tears. She called the boss's wife to come over, but she was stopped by her boss. "If you dare to call her, you don't have to follow me anymore." So, the lady boss still didn't know that he was injured? Did she really think that he had come back from a business trip? Chun-Yu was full of grief and indignation. Just when she decided to stay here to get some overtime pay, he kicked her out. Before leaving, he asked, "Where's my cell phone?" "It's broken. The front and back screens are seriously broken. It has been sent for repair," she said. "I got you a new one. Here you go." He glanced at it, pinched his eyebrows, and said, "Okay, you can go back now." When Chun-Yu was about to leave, she was stopped again. "Wait, is there anything else? Did she call?" "Her?" Chun-Yu was dazed for a second before she realized who it was. She shook her head and said, "No. The previous one was broken and turned off. I haven't received any calls from Mrs. Li." She did receive a few calls from clients. The light in Li Xiqing's eyes dimmed a bit. Then, with a wave of his hand, he lay back down. It was hard to tell what he was thinking. No one had come back to the house for half a month, and Nanny Rong was a bit panicked. She made a phone call to the old house. Nanny Rong more or less wanted to complain. When she heard Captain Li's raised voice, Nanny Rong knew that the people in the old house did not know about the couple's quarrel. Laughing awkwardly, Nanny Rong said, "Maybe they're living outside. After all, Sir doesn't only have one house." "Nonsense. That boy would not do something like that. Something must have happened." Old Master Li roared angrily. "This is ridiculous. I was wondering why Qian has been acting weird on the phone recently. This is great. That guy must have bullied her." Nanny Rong was speechless. In her eyes, Su Qianxi was his granddaughter, and Li Xiqing was the one who came to visit. "I understand. Don't worry about it. Leave it to me." "Okay." As soon as Nanny Rong said that, Grandpa Sheng hung up. The phone in the old house was from the 1920s and 1930s. Putting his finger in the hole, he dialed Li Xiqing's number. Captain Li was ready to scold Li Xiqing at any time. However, no one picked up. Then, he dialed 2 more, and the results were the same. After about half an hour, Li Xiqing called back. The old man wanted to curse even more. He opened his mouth and shouted, "You're going to die. You don't even answer your grandfather's phone. You're rebelling." After a second of silence, Li Xiqing said quietly, "Grandpa, I was in a meeting. Meeting. You only know how to attend meetings. Every time I call you, it's because you're in a meeting. What's the use of earning so much money? If you have the heart, why don't you go and please your wife? Otherwise, when your wife runs away, You'll be crying. Li Siqing did not say anything and looked at the calendar on the table. It had been 7 days since they last met. Dead? Say something. Old Master Li was furious. Yes, not dead. What's the matter, Grandpa? Captain Li suddenly felt angry and roared. You're rebelling? I just said so much, and you didn't hear a word? Yes. Chapter 336. When Li Siqing heard the roar, he frowned and said softly, She will not go back with me. Well, I don't care. If I don't see you two come back today, I will definitely have a heart attack, and then I will be pissed to death by you. Grandpa, since you know I am your grandpa, behave yourself. It must be your fault again. Our Qian is such a good girl. Say, why are you angry with her every day? Everything is fine. Why can't a husband and wife talk things out? Why do you have to do these things all day? Are you trying to piss me off? Grandpa, shut up. I don't want to listen. I will give you an hour to bring your wife back for dinner. If I don't see you later, then I won't eat. I will starve to death. Lu Saw, who was listening on the side, couldn't help laughing secretly. Captain Li was so old. How could he still be so childish? How could he play the game of hunger strike? However, Li Siqing couldn't stand it the most. With a sigh, Li Siqing said, Got it. You won't starve to death. Well, that's more like it. Captain Li hung up the phone with satisfaction and sat back on the sofa with his cane. However, the more he thought about it, the more uncomfortable he felt. Suddenly, he said, Oh no, how long did Xiao Rong say they haven't been home? Lu Saw thought for a moment and said, More than half a month. Li Siqing hung up the phone and let out a long sigh. After telling Cheng Yu to do the next thing, the rest became irrelevant. However, Li Siqing was still slowly reading the documents in his seat. Cheng Yu went out and came back. Seeing that Li Siqing was still there, she was a little surprised and asked, Boss, aren't you going back to the old house? Well, Li Siqing responded, looked up and said, Ask Yang to call and ask when her class is over. Okay, don't say I asked. Cheng Yu was speechless. Come on. Cheng Yu was very busy. Why couldn't she let others do this kind of small thing? But he was the boss, so Cheng Yu could not refuse. 2 minutes later, she quickly replied, There is one elective class left. Get ready for class. Okay, Li Siqing responded and leaned back in his chair. Then, should we let little Yang pick them up? Yes. She replied to Yang on WeChat, but as soon as the message was sent, he changed his mind. Forget it. I'll go by myself. Cheng Yu, don't tell her. Oh, she left the office, and he finished approving all the documents. It only took him 10 minutes at the slowest speed. Helpless, he opened the drawer, intending to place the documents inside. However, the moment he pulled the drawer open, he saw a black phone. The phone had been fixed for a long time, but it was broken, and he had no intention of using it again. He stuffed the documents into the folder, locked it, got up, and left the office. Su Qianxi walked out of the school with her bag in her arms and immediately saw the cool black Maybach. She stopped and seemed to have guessed who was in the car. When Yang and Li Siqing were in China at the same time, Yang would not drive this car. Chapter 337. As she approached, the window of the Maybach was rolled down. Li Siqing's cold and determined face was revealed. The familiar curve, the familiar profile, the familiar edge. Su Qianxi's eyes were involuntarily attracted to him. Li Siqing turned his head. His eyes were cold and deep, but when looked closely, they were unfathomable. Deliberately looking away, Su Qianxi held her backpack and was about to walk around him. The car started moving and blocked her way in an instant. Get in the car. It was an order that could not be denied. His voice was deep and familiar. Su Qianxi's heart skipped a beat. Looking at her, he said slowly, Grandpa wants you to go back to the old house. Grandpa. Su Qianxi pursed her lips, opened the door of the passenger seat, and sat in. Let's go. Li Siqing looked at her with a deeper gaze. Su Qianxi clearly felt his gaze so deep and intense. Feeling a bit nervous, she still pretended to be calm, but her hand holding her backpack tightened. Suddenly, Li Siqing moved. He leaned over, and the distance between the two was shortened. Su Qianxi was startled and shrank back. Turning her head, she saw a pair of cold eyes. Subconsciously, she held her breath and looked at him. Li Xiqing looked down and glanced at her, finding that she was slightly trembling, looking at him as if she was facing a formidable enemy. In an instant, Li Xiqing clearly felt that his heart, which he thought had become numb from all the work, was being whipped again, burning with pain. Was it that scary? He could not understand what kind of existence he was in her eyes. Su Qianxi clearly noticed that his eyes were slightly dim. Her heart fluttered, and there was a flash of surprise in her eyes. However, before she could figure it out, he had already walked away. At the same time, holding the seat belt in his hand, he pressed the button on the lower left corner. He silently started the car and drove steadily in the direction of the old house. No one spoke on the way. No one spoke first, and the atmosphere was so quiet that it was awkward. When they arrived at the old house, it was almost 6 p.m. It was dinner time. Lu Sa put the dishes on the table. Seeing Li Xiqing coming in, she was a bit surprised and said, "Captain, the young master is back." Captain Li came out with a cane. When he saw Li Xiqing, he was about to lose his temper. However, when he saw Su Qianxi behind him, he immediately calmed down. He snorted and walked towards them. Su Qianxi hurried to hold Grandpa and called, "Grandpa, are you looking for me?" "Humph, I'm not looking for you. I'm looking for you." The old man was very unhappy. "Let's eat first." "Yes." Qin Shua walked out from inside. When she saw the two of them, there was a meaningful look on her face. It was rare for Li Xiao to be at home. Seeing his second son and daughter-in-law come back, he was in a good mood. He pushed his wife and said, "Let's eat." The family sat at the table, and Captain Li naturally sat at the head of the table. He took the bowl handed over by Lu Sa, looked at Li Xiqing, and said, "Where did you say you were going to hold the wedding last time?" Wedding, what a distant word. When Su Qianxi heard this, she paused eating and looked at Li Xiqing. Li Xiqing looked indifferent, glanced at Su Qianxi, and said slowly, "I forgot. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.